I, Hermione, travel through time to Marvel to be the savior. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 276. Since I got mental illness, I have become more energetic. Cedric appears. Ron's home is still very warm, although it looks old and poor everywhere. Everyone has simple thoughts and doesn't think too much, so they can live happily. In fact, most troubles come from thinking too much and having too little. The Weasley family liked Harry very much in the original play, and they also like Miss Hermione very much here. In the original play, Hermione was probably regarded as the future daughter-in-law. Here, it's not that old Weasley looked down on his son, but he really felt that Ron was not worthy of the beautiful Hermione. Hermione is not only beautiful and gentle, but also has no airs. Her kindness is revealed in the details. There is no such good girl. Hermione here even went into the kitchen to help cook. Of course, there are a lot of food in Hermione's space ring. Just take out some and put it on the plate. The Weasley family even thanked Miss Hermione for coming and adding such rich food to their family. During the meal, old Weasley even asked about Miss Hermione's being a big star in the Muggle world. Miss Hermione was not proud and complacent, but just said that the Muggle world likes to look at faces. As long as you are beautiful, you can become a star with a little packaging. It's no big deal. Seeing that Miss Hermione said it so simply, everyone didn't ask any more questions. Although Hermione is very popular in the Muggle world, in the Wizarding world, people are not so crazy about celebrity idols, except for licking dogs, because licking dogs are strange creatures that can break through the lower limit of human beings. Everyone didn't waste time, and after dinner, they went out together. Old Weasley kept it a secret and didn't say what he was going to do specifically. Maybe he didn't know it very well. Harry and Ron were also stupid and couldn't guess it. Of course, Hermione knew that she came here for this system option task. Ron's sister, Ginny Weasley, grew up and became more and more beautiful. Miss Hermione took her and taught her how to take care of her skin and how to wear beautiful little skirts. In the original series, Ginny Weasley only liked Harry. Here, Ginny Weasley has already become gay and is not interested in Harry. She only worships and likes the beautiful young lady Hermione. She even has star posters, photo albums, etc. of Miss Hermione in the Muggle world. In comparison, Ron, a dog licker, is not as good as Ginny Weasley. Everyone came to the wilderness happily. Old Weasley's walking route is always contrary to the prosperity. For example, his home is located in the wilderness. The Flu fans 2 years ago were also super embarrassed. This time is not much better. This may be the style of their family. The wealthy family Malfoy family will definitely not be like this. On the road, although there are wild mountains and wilderness, the air is fresh. Ron, where are we going? Harry asked in a low voice. Because Hermione and Ginny are together, Harry and Ron, the two boys, can only be together. I don't know, Ron answered absent-mindedly. He peeked at Goddess Hermione and saw his sister Ginny holding hands with Hermione, and even hugging and other intimate behaviors. He was really envious. For more than 3 years, Ron had never held the hand of Goddess Hermione seriously. Until now, the sky was dimly lit. They set out too early today. Some of the little birds had not yet woken up to look for insects. That's why there was a shot of Hermione going upstairs to wake Harry and Ron up in the morning, entering a forest with ordinary trees that were not dense. In Hogwarts, the trees were as big as a few people. After seeing them so much, I forgot that most ordinary trees were only as thick as wrists and thighs, and not as tall as towering trees. Dad, where are we going? Ron saw that he really couldn't talk to Goddess Hermione, because Hermione was contracted by his sister Ginny Weasley alone. So Ron ran to old Weasley and asked. After all, he had been traveling for a long time, and he and Harry didn't know where to go. I'm confused too. Hurry up and catch up. Old Weasley's answer almost drove Ron crazy. He is indeed a father. He is really confused. No wonder his family is still so poor at his age. However, today everyone is wearing new clothes, a pair of travel clothes, and everyone is wearing hats. It looks like they are going to trek a long distance to climb mountains. Suddenly, there is movement in front. Arthur, you've kept me waiting. A middle-aged man wearing glasses, a hiking hat, and an ordinary cane appeared under the tree in front. He was slightly fat and looked ordinary. Sorry, Amos. Old Weasley looked back at his son Ron and replied, one of us overslept. Ron was speechless, blaming him. This is Amos Diggory, my colleague from the Ministry of Magic. Amos Diggory, Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures of the Ministry of Magic. He didn't have many roles in the original play. His son Cedric Diggory, he is the protagonist. A very handsome guy. This handsome guy is very naughty. His appearance is different from others. He jumped down from the tree beside him. He is tall, sunny and handsome. He is a big boy full of reason, talent and elegant demeanor. He is 3 years older than Harry, but only 2 grades higher than Harry in Hogwarts. This strong guy must be Cedric, right? Asked old Weasley with a smile. Cedric is very polite. He has a sunny smile. He stepped forward and shook hands with old Weasley without being humble or arrogant, and said with a smile, yes, sir, please follow me. In the original movie, the Harry Potter series of movies was made for children, so it is naturally impossible to have too much love, but Hermione, who came through, obviously broke this setting. After handsome Cedric greeted old Weasley politely, his eyes were naturally attracted by the opposite sex. There were 2 beautiful girls in the old Weasley team, Ginny Weasley and Miss Hermione Granger. The former is a beauty at the normal level, while the latter is directly a fairy. Miss Hermione's beauty is well known in Hogwarts. Cedric certainly knows her. Cedric is considering whether to come over and say hello. After all, in the original movie, when Cedric first met, he didn't even take the initiative to say hello to Harry Potter. Wouldn't it be impolite to run to the beautiful girl Miss Hermione? Miss Hermione's system gave Cedric handsome face. For him, an option dialog box popped up. Option 1. Handsome boy, come and look here. Since my sister got mental illness, I have been more energetic. Look at my big eyes full of wisdom. What do you think? Complete the task and reward the exclusive attribute, Spirit, +1. Option 2. Take the initiative to throw herself into Cedric's arms, and touch her forehead charmingly, with a glittering look in her eyes, and say, I get dizzy when I see handsome guys. Thank you for holding me. Make Harry and Ron jealous at the same time, and complete the task to reward the exclusive attribute, Yandir, +1. Option 3. I am very cold, and it is impossible for me to take the initiative to say hello to handsome guys. Complete the task and get a reward of +1 basic attribute. Without a doubt, faced with the funny option 1 and the embarrassing option 2 that makes people dig out a 3-bedroom apartment with their toes, Miss Hermione did not hesitate and directly locked on option 3. She is not so cold, but Miss Hermione will never bow down to a handsome guy. Only handsome guys are fascinated by her, and she will never lose her mind for that handsome guy. Because Miss Hermione is so beautiful and outstanding, even Ginny Weasley beside her didn't look at Cedric more, and just felt that the beautiful star Miss Hermione beside her could never get enough of her. New book, please support. Thank you everyone. Chapter 277, The Ace Pilot applied for battle, and the door key was an old boot. As for Hermione, she didn't need to do anything to successfully complete the task, so why not? It's not like she can't pretend to be cool. Oh my god. Amos Diggory, a colleague of old Weasley, greeted Harry when he saw him. You must be Harry Potter. Yes. Harry hadn't enjoyed this feeling of being the center of attention for a long time. In the 1st grade, when Harry was 11 years old, he was led to Diagon Alley by Hagrid for the first time. At that time, almost every wizard would exclaim when they saw Harry, "Oh my god, it's Harry Potter." Now, from Amos Diggory, I finally found the feeling of the past. It's a great honor. Amos Diggory was so polite. The two shook hands with each other. This friendly way also showed that Harry had grown up and everyone no longer treated him as a child. I'm honored too, Harry said with a smile. Congratulations on completing the option 3 task. Reward basic attribute +1. Miss Hermione successfully completed the task by pretending to be cool, and she can breathe a sigh of relief. Everyone was talking and laughing. and came to a place with no trees, only a green meadow. The scenery here was spectacular, although there were hills and downhills. It was really cool to stand on a high place and look over. "Look, it's right there," Amos Diggory began to speak as a guide. "Let's get started." Old Weasley couldn't wait any longer. "Okay, hurry up, everyone find a place to stand." Everyone began to gather around an old boot, young and old, and this scene of a group of people looked really funny, not much worse than the sand sculpture tasks provided by the funny system. Although Miss Hermione was approachable, she also had her own style. Okay, such behavior was really a bit cheap. She wanted to quit and stop associating with this group of people. "Why are they standing around that old boot?" Ron also questioned. Fortunately, they still had a product that was equally speechless, such as flu powder. So although Ron was curious about the old boot, he didn't feel anything strange about it. "Don't underestimate this old boot. It's a door key," old Weasley replied. Portkeys are usually inconspicuous but are magical items that wizards have cast special magic on. They can quickly transfer people from one space to another. It sounds very high-end. But the old Weasley family and his colleague Amos Diggory turned the portkeys for this departure into old boots, instantly changing from a high-end magic prop to this kind of low-level bad taste. In addition, everyone started to lie on the ground in a very awkward posture, and they had to reach out to touch the old boots. Ding dong, the system pop-up window came. Option 1. What a crap thing. Can't the portkey be replaced with a high-end magic prop? Old Weasley and Amos, you two old guys really have no taste. Is it so embarrassing to be poor? Complete the task and reward exclusive attribute. Complaint, +1. Option 2. It's too embarrassing. Burn this old boot with fire, and let's ride the flying broom. Although it will be a little slower, it is also decent. Complete the task and you will be rewarded with the exclusive attribute, Destruction, +1. Option 3. Forget it. Just bear with it for a while. When I have my own door key in the future, I can be as respectable as I want. Complete the task and you will be rewarded with the exclusive attribute, Low Key, +1. Hermione was furious, but there was nothing she could do. Complaining would definitely be useless and would only lower her image. By the way, is complaint also considered an attribute? Does the higher the attribute of complaining, the better the effect of complaining in the future? Option 2. Destruction is even more annoying, perhaps for the poor wizards old Weasley and Amos Diggory. It is already a very difficult thing to get an old boot door key. People are in a difficult situation, so don't tear them down. Bear with it for a while. Option 3. Just like when you are poor, you squeeze into buses and subways, and your comfort will naturally be greatly reduced. When you have money in the future, you can consider private cars and private planes. The same is true in the Muggle world. Ron is a very incompetent dog, but Harry is sensible. He took off his coat and let Hermione put it under him to prevent Miss Hermione from getting her clothes dirty when she was lying on the ground. Ron looked at Harry with wide eyes. Damn, when did you secretly take extra classes? Ginny Weasley couldn't wait to take off her clothes and put them on the ground for Hermione. Of course, Hermione stopped him. Ginny was a girl and didn't need to do that. When Ron wanted to follow suit, old Weasley coughed and said, "It's time to go. Kids, everyone hold on to the boots. Don't let go." Obviously, there were so many people, it was overloaded. Miss Hermione asked Ginny Weasley to hold on to her with one hand to avoid falling down in a while. Little Ginny Fan was happy. "Get ready. I'll count to 3, 2, 1. Then the dorky old boots began to work. Although everyone crawled on the ground and touched the old boots with their hands, the scene was very funny. But the dorky's ability is really powerful. This is also the ceiling that the technology of the Muggle world cannot break through in the next 1,000 years, time travel. This is much faster than flying. Everyone gathered around an old boot, like a big flower. As the portkey began to work, dark clouds and lightning appeared all around. The space was broken, forming a space-time channel. Everyone rotated and rose. When they were in the air, they were directly displayed in this area. It was awesome, this magic. Then in another area, also over a vast grassland, dark clouds and lightning appeared, and a space-time channel suddenly appeared. Harry, Hermione, Old Weasley, Ron, Amos Diggory and others appeared directly in the sky. "Let go, kids," Amos shouted happily. There was no accident. If one or two fell, it would be troublesome. What? Ron didn't hear clearly. He was a little dizzy from the spinning. "Let go," Old Weasley reminded loudly. At this time, everyone heard it clearly, and everyone let go almost at the same time. Then, everyone fell freely from the sky in strange postures. In the original movie, this scene is so funny. If you fall on your neck, you will probably fall to the ground and be smashed into a box. If there are stones on the ground, your head will be broken and bloody. The two old guys, plus the handsome Cedric Diggory, are all very experienced. They walk down from the air, constantly stepping their legs, mastering the balance of their bodies, and landed smoothly. In the original movie, Hermione, Harry, Ron and other children were not so lucky. They all fell flat on their faces. The system options also popped up at this critical moment. Option 1, free fall. Enjoy the sour feeling of your butt hitting the ground. Complete the task to reward basic attributes +1. Option 2, take out the parachute, land safely in a scientific way, and complete the task to reward 1 helmet. Option 3, the ace pilot applied for the battle, directly and coolly hugged the little beauty Ginny Weasley, took out the flying broom in one hand, turned 360 degrees in the air, performed difficult actions, and then flew down smoothly. Complete the task and get a lollipop as a reward. The system is really bad. If you let your butt hit the ground, you will be rewarded with +1 basic attribute. If you use a parachute, you will be rewarded with a helmet. Handsome and cool, you have to perform difficult actions. The ace pilot applied for a battle, but he was only rewarded with a lollipop. Who are you looking down on? Chapter 278. So happy, I feel like my life has reached its peak. Malfoy is here too. Although Hermione is usually low-key, not interested in the limelight, and unwilling to cause trouble, being cautious is her motto. However, being low-key is not cowardly, nor is it cowardly and powerless. Being low-key means that Hermione has the ability, but she just doesn't want to do it, which does not mean that she can be bullied. She has been silently working hard to become stronger, and no one can bully her. The ace pilot applied for a fight. When Ron and Harry fell from the sky uncontrollably, Miss Hermione was flexible and grabbed Ginny Weasley beside her, and then quickly took out the flying broom. 360 degrees in the air, difficult moves, and then landed smoothly with a girl. The old Weasley, Amos Diggory and handsome Cedric who had walked down from the air were all stunned. Originally, they wanted to laugh at the newcomers like in the original show, your noses must be unblocked. But here, they were all amazed at Ms. Hermione's ace pilot's driving skills. As for Harry and Ron who fell to the ground, they looked even more embarrassed. "Thank you," Ginny Weasley blushed and said to her idol Miss Hermione in admiration. If it weren't for Ms. Hermione, she would have been like Ron and Harry, with a concussion and a blocked nose. Hermione smiled charmingly and took back her broom. "Congratulations on completing option 3, and get a lollipop as a reward." Old Weasley walked over and pulled up his son Ron. After all, as a father, he had just tricked his son. Handsome boy Cedric finally had a chance to get close to Harry. Cedric walked over and stretched out his hand to show his friendliness. Harry smiled and also stretched out his hand, and then Cedric pulled Harry up. "Thank you." Harry expressed his gratitude. Boys don't need to say much. At this time, everyone tidy up, mainly to pat the dust off their bodies. Traveling with the old Weasley family, they must be covered in dust. No wonder their family is always looked down upon by Malfoy's father Lucius. On the vast grassland, a giant building is located in it. It is very rare that in the wizarding world, there will be such a Muggle modern architectural style competition venue, which is built with reinforced concrete and soil, and can accommodate many spectators at the same time. This kind of building is funded by the engineering team of the Muggle world. Because the buildings in the wizarding world are still very old, most of them are made of stone and wood. There is no regulation on flying brooms here, and you can ride them at will, so there are many naughty wizards riding flying brooms all over the sky. Look, it's so lively. Children, welcome to the Quidditch World Cup. At this time, Amos Diggory finally told the purpose of their trip here. Hurry up, girls, don't get separated. Old Weasley was concerned, because there are so many people here, like a super big market, a group of people shuttled through it, and they might get separated if they were not careful. Sister, look. Ginny Weasley took Hermione's little hand. She was very happy and excited, pointing to the interesting scene on the roadside to share with her idol. At this moment, it felt like a date with a celebrity sister at the market. It was so exciting. It felt like life had reached its peak. Hermione was in a good mood, too. The main reason was that the atmosphere here was very good. It was easy to be infected when you were in it. We have to separate, old man. See you at the game, Amos Diggory said with his son, handsome Cedric. They had their own tent, so of course they had to separate. See you at the game, old Weasley responded. Cedric, st, let's go. Amos Diggory saw that his son Cedric couldn't help but look at the beautiful Miss Hermione in the crowd, so he called his name. See you later, Cedric. Harry knew Hermione's charm and had long been accustomed to it. As long as he was not a eunuch, there was no normal man who would not be attracted by Hermione's beauty. Thinking of Cedric pulling him just now, Harry said goodbye to Cedric politely. See you later. Cedric was also very polite to Harry. Old Weasley led everyone to a place full of small tents. On this patch of grass, there were small tents of various colors. Although the colors were different, they were all about the same size. It was obvious that these tents of the same specifications should be from the same company. Here we are, kids. This is where we will stay temporarily, old Weasley said, and he was the first to go in. Harry outside was very surprised, because the tent looked really small from the outside. It was estimated that old Weasley would not be able to stand up straight if he lived in it alone. But this time Ron obviously knew something and did not show his ignorance. He also followed in. Ginny Weasley also pulled Hermione in. Harry stood outside the cloth tent and was stunned when he saw the scene inside. It looked very small outside, but it was very large inside, as big as 3 bedrooms and a living room. A warm home. Ron started looking for food after he came in. Great, Ginny, look, you can even take a shower. Old Weasley actually cared about his daughter's washing problem. Girls, unpack your bags and pick a bed. Ron, come out of the kitchen, we're all hungry. Come out of the kitchen, Ron. It turned out that there were Ron's 2 twin brothers in this large space, and no one knew when they arrived. Don't put your feet on the table. It was very noisy inside, but most of the people were scolding Ron. Harry was the last one to come in. Looking at everything inside, he was stunned, and then he exclaimed happily, I really love magic. It was amazing. From the door key to the current magic tent, all of which were technologies that the Muggle world could not achieve. Time quickly came to night. Happy times always pass quickly. In this area, bright lights were on. It was obvious that it was an electrical system from the Muggle world. The reinforced concrete World Cup venue was full of people. There were so many wizards coming to watch the game tonight, from all over the world. Come and buy the Quidditch World Cup event preview, a newspaper seller shouted. Old Weasley led a group of young wizards to the venue. The boys had painted their team support logos on their faces, and they looked like crazy fans of the World Cup. Oh my God, Dad, we are sitting so high. Ron was surprised as he kept going up. Although their family was very poor, they were sitting too high up. They might not be able to see the game clearly without a telescope. Old Weasley was just about to find an excuse to solve the embarrassment caused by money. The annoying Lucius family appeared. Lucius brought his son Malfoy. Malfoy was more handsome, but when he saw the beautiful lady Miss Hermione, he couldn't take his eyes off her. Lucius was used to mocking old Weasley, saying, you can say that if it rains, you will be the first to know. As a rich man and a high-ranking wizard with a high status, Lucius enjoyed the pleasure of belittling low-ranking wizards. But when Lucius' eyes also noticed the unreal beauty of Ms. Hermione, Lucius immediately showed a trace of viciousness and resentment in his eyes. Damn little witch. The last time they met, she gave Lucius a big gift, which was very mysterious, as if it was given to him by the mysterious man, and it had to be stored in the secret room and could not be opened until 49 days later. However, after waiting for so long, Lucius discovered that the secret room actually contained a pair of green slippers. Damn it, This femme fatale had fooled him for so long, and his only son Malfoy was still bewitched by her. Please support my new book. Thank you everyone. Chapter 279 Swallow, How Can I Live Without You? Death Eater's Attack. For Malfoy, he couldn't live without Hermione. Swallow, how can I live without you? Malfoy's eyes were straight. Miss Hermione's clothes were different every day. They were fresh and super beautiful. He immediately invited her. My father and I will sit in the minister's box. This is an invitation from Minister Cornelius Fudge himself. Hermione, you can come too. Of course, Hermione refused and said, no need. Malfoy wanted to continue to invite her, but was directly scolded by his father Lucius beside him. Now that he saw Hermione, he wanted to kill her. What a bastard son. Shameful thing. Why like anyone else, but fall in love with a mudblood? Is it useful to be beautiful? Malfoy was scolded by his father again, and he immediately became much more honest. But with a pair of handsome eyes, he still looked at Hermione from time to time. As he grew older, Malfoy's face became thicker and thicker. He would flirt with Hermione when he had the chance, to make Hermione turn back and know that missing this handsome guy was missing everything. Lucius didn't want to say anything more about his hopeless son. He would die without a woman. But Lucius also knew that Malfoy was only obsessed with the beautiful Miss Hermione, and had no interest in other noble wizard girls. To be fair, this Hermione's appearance was indeed incredibly beautiful. An old man of Lucius' age would certainly not be interested in a little girl like Hermione. He was more interested in that boy, Harry Potter, because this boy had ruined Lord Voldemort's plan more than once. He was a damned man. Lucius thought of something, and he suddenly grabbed Harry's arm with the expensive cane in his hand. Harry hated this impolite father and son to the core. I hope you enjoy yourself while you can still breathe. There was something else in his words. The scene was very lively, and all kinds of noises soon drowned it out. How could Lucius be so mean? Harry, what did he just say to you? Ron asked. The place was already noisy, and Lucius pulled Harry closer to speak. It was normal that Ron didn't hear clearly. Nothing, just a crazy old man. Ron smiled. I like this description. Old Weasley began to call out, come up, kids. You can see farther from here because you sit high. There was no need to keep unhappy things in mind. Hermione took out a telescope and handed it to Ginny Weasley beside her and smiled. You can see more clearly with this. Thank you, sister. Ginny was very happy. It's the Irish team. That's joy. Ron, a fanatical fan, began to shout. And Mallet, and Moran, on the huge Quidditch field. The first team had already entered the field on a flying broom. It was indeed a professional team, and the momentum was terrible. At the same time, fireworks and dancing green men appeared in the sky. It was magic. Irish team, Irish team, Irish team. The fans in the audience were cheering. It seemed that a more powerful team was about to appear. The Bulgarian team is here. This is a red team, and the leader is very showy and has a super burly figure. Who is that? That's the best seeker in the world. As a fan, Ron knew it very well. Krum. His full name is Victor Krum. This person is like a Quidditch star, and he is the most popular in the whole stadium. A very strong and handsome guy. He looks very fierce and tall. If Ron knew that this person is one of his future rivals, I wonder if he would still be so excited at this moment. In the original drama and movie, the man who was most ambiguous with Hermione was this Krum. Of course, Hermione here, that Krum has no chance. Miss Hermione thought that the system option today would choose to close the business, but she still miscalculated. The system pop-up window appeared at this most enthusiastic time. Option 1. Make the atmosphere on the scene more lively, drop 1,000 kilograms of explosives, and let the dazzling mushroom cloud bloom on the field. Complete the task and reward one off-road motorcycle. Option 2. Put on the invisibility cloak and go see what Lucius and the others are doing. We can't let him get too lonely. Give him a few grenades to liven things up. Complete the task and get a box of ammunition as a reward. Option 3. Watch the game quietly and have some popcorn and coke. Complete the task and get a cup of milk tea as a reward. The system is too bad. Options 1 and 2 are obviously going to cause trouble, especially option 2, but Hermione still wants to be quiet. Just watch the game. Why bother with a big fuss? If the grenades and explosives really go off, I'm afraid we won't be able to watch the game tonight. Miss Hermione took out popcorn and Coke and ate them with the beautiful girl Ginny Weasley beside her. Ginny is so happy. Good evening. The person standing in the best position to watch the game spoke. He looked greasy today and was obviously infected by the lively atmosphere. As the host of this game, he had to say a few words before the game started. As the Minister of Magic, I am now very honored to welcome each of you to watch the 422nd Quidditch World Cup Final. Fortunately, he did not say anything long-winded, and directly announced, "The game begins now." While speaking, Minister Fudge waved his wand, and a light flew out in the night sky, lighting up the night. This move is a bit like a signal gun. Congratulations on completing Option 3 task. Reward 1 cup of milk tea. Hermione took good care of her younger sister. She took out milk tea and asked Ginny, "Do you want milk tea, Ginny?" Ginny blushed and shook her head. She was very excited now. She ate the snacks brought by Sister Hermione, and at the same time, she could watch such a wonderful Quidditch World Cup game with her idol Sister Hermione. The game was very exciting, and Hermione was quite satisfied. During the game, fortunately, the system options did not pop up to make trouble again, so Miss Hermione could watch the whole game at ease. After the game, everyone was very happy, especially Ron. There is not only love in a boy's life, but also hobbies. Everyone returned to the magic tent, and Ron started to talk non-stop with excitement. He flies like a bird. He is not only an athlete, he is an artist, Ron exaggeratedly described. Ironically, in the original movie, the man that Ron admired so much ended up being his wife's ex-boyfriend. Of course, this would not happen here, because Ron would never have a wife. Ginny Weasley saw that her brother was so exaggerated, so she joked, "You are in love with him, Ron." "Shut up." Ron immediately looked at Miss Hermione, who smiled and said nothing. Like a lady from a noble family, how could he like a man? Only the peerless beauty Hermione was worthy of Ron's willing licking dog. "Victor, I love you, when we are separated, my heart beats only for you." Ron's twin brother would not give Ron face, and he danced and sang on the spot. Ron was embarrassed and angry. You are going too far." Even Harry Potter joined in the singing and mocked Ron. Hermione didn't understand what song they were singing, but it was not nice anyway. Chapter 280. I strongly opposed Mr.'s withdrawal from the literary world. Dark Mark. The joyful frolicking did not last long, as it was interrupted by the noisy crackling sounds outside. The Irish team seems to be celebrating their victory. Ron was not angry, as he knew everyone was just joking. "Okay, stop it, it's not the Irish." Old Weasley was rarely serious, as he had not been like this all day. "We have to leave here, hurry up." Many children did not even react, not understanding what had suddenly happened. When everyone left the tent in a daze, they were all stunned by the scene in front of them. They saw that a fight had actually broken out outside, and it was not just a fight between fans of the team, but a real war. The fire and magic, screams and corpses, the whole tragic scene, compared to the lively daytime, was simply the difference between heaven and hell. The air was filled with the smell of gunpowder and death. "Run, it's the Death Eaters." The living people were terrified, and everyone staged a panicked escape. It seems that the name of Death Eaters is so scary that they have forgotten that they are also wizards. There is little resistance. Everyone is like fish on a chopping board, waiting to be set on fire and slaughtered by Death Eaters. The same is true for old Weasley. He kept his head down and led everyone to escape anxiously. He didn't even think about resisting. Old Weasley turned back and shouted, "Run back to the key. Everyone stay together. Fred, George, keep an eye on Ginny. Run. Everyone, keep up." Miss Hermione looked at this chaotic scene. She was surprisingly calm, and the system options popped up immediately. Option 1. There are so many of you. Why don't you resist? Aren't you wizards? Don't you know magic? Stand up, fly to the sky, and as a savior, call on everyone to learn to fight back. Completing the task will reward you with the exclusive attribute, Courage, +1. Option 2. I was strongly against your withdrawal from the literary world. Choose to fight in your own way, require to save at least 3 children from the Death Eaters. Completing the task will reward you with the basic attribute +1. Option 3. Don't worry about it, just save your own life. I don't care about other people's lives. Completing the task will reward you with the exclusive attribute, low-key, +1. According to Hermione's personality, it is undoubtedly option 3, and with her ability, she can definitely protect herself. However, option 1 is also exciting. Why do you only want to escape? Why don't you resist? The literary world once said, pity their misfortune and be angry at their lack of struggle. Obviously, everyone is a wizard. Obviously there are more of them. Obviously everyone carries wands and even flying brooms. But when everyone heard that it was a Death Eater attack, they were immediately scared and ran away in a panic, even causing all kinds of trampling. In the original movie, Harry was knocked to the ground and then kicked unconscious by the fleeing people. He is the male protagonist, with a halo to protect him. For ordinary people, their intestines would probably be stepped on. This time the options are a bit difficult. Miss Hermione's face is gloomy and she is silent for a long time. She is not a savior. Facing this group of poor wizards who are in a panic and just want to escape, she thinks that she does not have such a strong appeal. Moreover, flying into the air on her own initiative, isn't this a living target? To put herself in danger in order to save them. This is not Miss Hermione's style. However, at this time, option 3, which is not related to her, seems too ruthless. After all, these are fresh lives. It's okay if you haven't encountered it, but now it's happening in front of you. How can you pretend not to see it? Especially option 2, which only requires saving more than 3 children. That's right, being low-key is not inhumane. Hermione is essentially a lady, and he can watch the old-timers who have been polluted by the secular world die without saving them. But can he really watch the innocent children die without saving them? Where is Hermione? In the original movie, Harry Potter became a weak person at this time, and was constantly called by Ron and Hermione, looking for him to escape together. But here, everyone soon discovered that Ms. Hermione was missing. She was just here. It's bad. Hermione, where are you? Ron was anxious. At the critical moment of life and death, he could still care about the goddess. If there is a level for licking dogs, he is at least at the Star Glory level. Hermione is agile. She has already become invisible, wearing the witch cloak of ominous signs, and adding the invisibility cloak. In the chaotic venue, it is not easy to find children in danger. Many of the people who came to watch the Quidditch World Cup this time were like old Weasley, with their families. 2 meters ahead, a child who looked less than 10 years old was hit, and the people behind him who were running for their lives in panic were about to step on him. In a hurry, Hermione directly released magic to freeze everyone, and then rushed over quickly to save the child in stealth mode before canceling the magic. The second child was wrapped in burning flames. The temperature was very high, and the toxic gas had already made the child dying. At the critical moment, Hermione used the Buddha palm to slap over, and the terrifying palm power was almost scraping the ground 3 feet. The flames were extinguished, the toxic smoke was blown away, and the invisible Hermione quickly rescued the child. The third one was a bit unlucky, and the child's parents had been killed by the Death Eaters. There were 3 Death Eaters at the scene. They were dressed in strange clothes, like evil spirits from hell, cruelly raised their wands, and did not even let the children go. At the critical moment, in the dark night, a dazzling tiger fissionite flashed. Sword drawing technique. The crying child was quickly rescued, and then after a long time, the bodies of the 3 Death Eaters were split in 2, and all fell in a pool of blood. The sword drawing technique is so terrifying. It was the first time that Ms. Hermione used the sword drawing technique to kill someone, but she did not regret it. She only killed bad guys. If she did not draw the sword, then this innocent child would have died. That night, the war ended earlier than in the original drama and movie, because there was a shadow hero who saved a total of 11 children in one night. If Hermione had not taken action, they would have died. Congratulations on completing the option 2 task, and the reward is basic attribute +1. Hermione was a little tired. Finally, She could take off the invisibility cloak and have a good rest as an ordinary wizard to escape. Hermione, where did you go just now? You worried me to death. Ron almost cried when he saw Hermione. He thought Hermione was dead and couldn't find her no matter how hard he looked. Hermione explained, I was just squeezed away by the people who were fleeing. It took me a long time to find it. Don't worry, silly. I know magic. Sister, Ginny Weasley was also worried and hugged Hermione, crying. She was so scared. There were scorched earth everywhere, people running for their lives everywhere, and dead people everywhere. At night, under the moonlight, black smoke was still rising from the ruined land. It was so tragic. There was a man who walked out of the darkness arrogantly. He was very satisfied with the scene in front of him. A half-burned wheel blocked his way, and he kicked it away directly and roughly. Harry didn't have Miss Hermione's care. He fainted on the ground just like in the original play. When he woke up, he just saw the arrogant young man. The arrogant man didn't notice Harry. In the dim light, Harry vaguely remembered that he had seen the man there, but he couldn't remember it for a while. He was still dizzy now. Dark Mark. The arrogant man didn't care about Harry. He raised his wand and cast a special magic. A huge green skull appeared in the night sky, almost covering the sky and the sun. A green poisonous snake was spitting out of the mouth of the huge skull. This mark was too scary. Please support the new book. Thank you everyone. Chapter 281. Time is silent, but it answers all questions. The train to Hogwarts. Harry felt a pain in his head as if it was stabbed by needles. He took a deep breath for a long time before he finally figured out something. No wonder the arrogant villain in front of him looked so familiar. It turned out that Harry had indeed seen him in a nightmare. Last night, Harry had a nightmare at Ron's house. In the nightmare, the young wizard who killed the Muggle old man with the Avada Kedavra curse was the man in front of him. Is it related to Voldemort? But that's right, Death Eaters are Voldemort's loyal followers. We have to catch him. The young wizard also knew that it was not advisable to stay here for long. After releasing the dark mark to the dark night sky, he disappeared. At this time, Ron's shouting came from a distance. Harry, Harry, where are you? Hermione whispered to Ron. Let's go over there and take a look. Hermione pointed to the place where the terrifying dark mark appeared in the night sky. Ron was also stunned when he saw it. Oh my god, what is that? I don't know. We'll know when we go over there. Hermione had a feeling that such abnormal places must be related to the male protagonist. Sure enough, Ron and Hermione just came over and saw Harry still sitting on the ground in a daze. Harry, we've been looking for you for a long time and thought we couldn't find you, Ron said in surprise. Ron, Hermione, it's really not easy for the three of them to be alive together after encountering such a horrible thing. Miss Hermione carefully checked Harry's injuries, and Harry shook his head and said it was okay. Gone with the Wind. Under the tragic scene now, it's not the time to appreciate Hermione, the beautiful lady. What is that? Ron pointed to the terrifying skull and venomous snake in the night sky and asked. The special scar on Harry's forehead began to hurt a little, but he shook his head and said he didn't know. However, at this moment, everyone thought that everything could stop, but attacks came directly from all directions. It was the idiots of the Ministry of Magic. Spell. They didn't show up when the Death Eaters were killing and arsoning the most fiercely. Now, when everything was burned to ashes, they were like blind people, attacking Harry, Hermione and Ron with magic. Fortunately, this magic attack was just a spell to feint, not to kill directly. Stop, that's my son. Old Weasley also rushed over in a hurry. In an emergency, the words he said could represent what he cared about most. Old Weasley came to the three people and asked with concern, Ron, Harry, Hermione, are you okay? Ron was afraid of his father's punishment, so he quickly explained, we came back to find Harry. The people from the enforcement department of the Ministry of Magic didn't want to see the emotional drama of the reunion of the father and son. They all took their wands as weapons and surrounded them. It's ironic that they didn't catch any of the real murderers, but surrounded three innocent children. Who changed the mark? The leader asked seriously. Crouch. They didn't. Old Weasley was eager to explain. Don't lie. Barty Crouch, director of the enforcement department of the Ministry of Magic, was later transferred to the director of the International Magic Exchange and Cooperation Department. He was a serious person with short gray hair that was neatly combed. However, because of the special occasion today, he wore a hat and a windbreaker, and his old face was serious. They were old-fashioned and stupid, and looked like Professor Snape. He never gave up his suspicion of Harry and others, and never put down the wand in his hand. "You were caught alive at the crime scene. I need your reasonable explanation." "Crime scene?" Harry couldn't believe it. "Which place in this sea of fire tonight is not a crime scene? Just because he is the male protagonist, he should be targeted so unreasonably." "Barty, they are still children." Old Weasley also felt that Barty Crouch was a little confused. "This is the famous Harry Potter. Is he blind and doesn't recognize him?" If there was no Harry, the wizarding world would probably be shrouded in the fear of Voldemort. What crime? Ron didn't understand. "Aren't there terrorist incidents happening everywhere tonight?" "It's you-know-who, Harry. This is his mark." Miss Hermione was still relatively calm. Although the people in the Ministry of Magic's Enforcement Department were a bit stupid, it was not their fault. They were not capable enough and could not force it. When such a large magical world needs a child to save it, it is enough to show how hopeless the adults in this world are. However, this is a fairy tale movie, and we cannot think about problems with adult thinking. Hermione's reminder shocked Ron. "What? Voldemort? Are those masked people tonight also his people?" "His followers," Old Weasley answered his stupid son. "It's the Death Eaters. In fact, if you are careful, you would have heard someone shouting when you were running for your life. The Death Eaters are coming. Run." However, it was too chaotic at the time, and Harry was trampled and kicked unconscious, so naturally no one knew much. Barty Crouch was silent for a while. After carefully observing the three children in front of him, he seemed to finally recognize that this was the famous Harry Potter. He realized how stupid his group of people were, but it was not easy to admit his mistakes on the spot. He could only say, "Everyone follow me." Harry was not angry with them. After all, the horror tonight was too sudden. By the time they reacted, the bad guys had escaped, and the scene was a mess. It just so happened that Harry and his group were under the dark mark, so they were suspected for a reason. Harry stood up and wanted to provide useful information. "There was a person there just now." "Where is he?" Pointing with his finger, Harry recalled. He took out his wand and left that terrifying mark in the sky. Barty Crouch looked at Harry Potter seriously, and then said, "Everyone, come this way." "Harry, a person, who is it?" Old Weasley came over and asked. "I don't know much either. I only saw him in nightmares," Harry answered honestly. After Harry, Ron and Hermione were taken back. They naturally had to be recorded for testimony, but the Ministry of Magic could not solve the case of tonight. In terms of the ability to solve cases, the Ministry of Magic and Hogwarts are similar. Just like Maori Kogoro, who ultimately needs Harry Potter, Conan Edogawa. Things are finally over for the time being, and Ron, Ginny Weasley, Hermione and Harry can finally go home. Everyone is very tired. Use the door key to go back quickly. Hermione took a hot bath and slept with Ginny Weasley at night. Even though it was almost dawn, it was time to sleep. The system, which had been silent for a long time, finally popped up options at an inappropriate time. I originally thought that there would be some special options when facing the group of people from the Ministry of Magic's Execution Department, maybe because too many people died at night. The original movie was made for children, and the scenes of trampling and chaos were not obvious. But Hermione, who traveled through time, saw it with her own eyes. The scene was too tragic. You can refer to the terrorist attacks in the Muggle world. It is definitely not as simple as just a few shots in the movie. The system options may have taken this into consideration. Life is heavy, and there are no inappropriate funny and sand sculpture tasks. But now that I'm back and ready to go to bed, the system options have returned to their original state. Chapter 282, When an Avalanche Occurs, No Snowflake is Innocent. The Triwizard Tournament. Option 1. It's dawn. Go out and breathe the fresh morning air. Do a standard and elegant radio gymnastics. 123,422,343,234 again. Complete the task and reward the exclusive attribute, Fitness, +1. Option 2. Take Ginny Weasley out for a morning run. The requirement is no less than 2 kilometers. Complete the task and reward the exclusive attribute, health, +1. Option 3. Let's go to sleep. Too tired. Complete the task and reward 1 piece of handmade bread. I don't know what to say about these 3 options, although the rewards of option 1 and option 2 are better, but Hermione is still too lazy to move. Fitness and bodybuilding also depend on the situation. After so many things last night, Miss Hermione even acted as a shadow hero to save 11 children. She must be very tired. Just make handmade bread. Anyway, even if the sky falls now, Hermione has to rest and sleep. This sleep is very comfortable. When I wake up, Harry, Ron and Hermione will start school. It's rare that the 3 of them talked very little along the way. On the train, the 3 looked at each other and laughed. Ron spoke first. Although we have experienced a lot in these years, the 3 of us appearing together on this train again feels like we are back to the first time we met. As he said that, Ron also put on the green hat full of memories on his head. He looked at Hermione and said, "Look, Hermione, the green hat you gave me that year, I still have it." Hermione couldn't help laughing. She only said, "Silly." Harry also laughed. People can't always be silent in pain and sadness. Although the outside world may continue to bring harm and suffering to people, but we must also believe in our own body. It will try every means to make you happier and happier. So, don't reject that kind of inexplicable joy. Try to accept it and encourage it. Life must be colorful, otherwise, when there is an avalanche, no snowflake is innocent. Would you like some candy? The auntie who sells snacks on the train came 3 or 4 years ago. The auntie was still very young, but now she has a head full of white hair. Time is unforgiving. Auntie has seen too many passengers every year, so of course she won't remember Harry and Ron. However, the beautiful Ms. Hermione is still deeply remembered in her mind, because Auntie has never seen such a beautiful girl. Now seeing this peerless beauty, it is really hard to take away the admiration of her eyes. Hermione is reading the newspaper, because of the system option task. If she doesn't choose to read the newspaper, she will have to choose to blow up the train or jump off the train. There is no way. She can only choose to read the newspaper. The headline on the front page of the newspaper is The Dark Mark, and the title is also very scary. Quidditch World Cup Horror Incident. Do you want candy? The old woman came and kept repeating, "Do you want candy, children?" A pack of bubble gum and a licorice stick. Ron stood up, and then he found something, embarrassed, and said, "There is not enough money. I just want bubble gum." Is he a funny guy? Hermione was speechless about Ron's behavior. "It doesn't matter, I'll pay." Harry is an invisible rich second generation. He is not short of money. In the 1st grade, Harry captured Ron's heart with a lot of food. Now it has become a habit. "Thank you." Ron was still a little embarrassed. In the original series, he only wanted to buy it for himself, but here he wanted to buy one for Miss Hermione, although he also knew that Miss Hermione didn't need this snack. At this time, several young female wizards came from the other side of the train corridor, full of laughter and joy. All of them were charming and energetic. "2 pumpkin pies, thank you," the young female wizard said with a smile. In the original series, Harry had never seen the world, but he was fascinated and his eyes were straight. After he paid for Ron, he just stood there stupidly, and the old woman asked Harry, "Do you want dessert, dear?" The young female wizards looked at Harry's stupidity and laughed. "Of course," and Harry immediately turned into Jubaji and laughed stupidly. The above are all scenes in the movie where Harry is useless. Although Harry here is not very good sometimes, his aesthetic sense is still no problem when it comes to appreciating beauties. Just by glancing at them, he came to the conclusion in his heart, not as beautiful as Ginny Weasley, let alone Goddess Hermione. I won't even look at her again. Although this kind of ordinary young female wizard is very energetic, there are still a lot of them and they have no characteristics. Not worth paying more attention to. "No, I'm not hungry, thank you." Harry calmly rejected the old woman. It's not that he was reluctant to spend money, but mainly because he had no appetite. On the train when he first came to Hogwarts, his heart was full of novelty. He wanted to try all kinds of magic snacks. Now, perhaps he has really grown up and has higher pursuits. He no longer has the same desire for ordinary snacks as before. It's terrible. Hermione put down the newspaper in the carriage and pretended to exclaim, "The Ministry of Magic doesn't know who did it? Don't they have a decent detective?" Ron had just given Hermione snacks, and Hermione didn't refuse, but Hermione gave Ron more snacks. He ate happily and replied, "There are a lot of security guards," Dad said. But that night, something happened under their noses, so they are very worried. Is he worried about his own incompetence? Hermione has gotten used to the stupidity and incompetence of the wizarding world, because nothing is perfect. Although it is magical and fun for wizards to know magic, it is undeniable that there are some unbearable flaws here. There is not even a wizard who can solve the case. There is a huge gap in this profession, but the education of the Magic Academy does not produce detectives, because the professors themselves can't do it. Harry saw the moving pattern in the newspaper, which was the dark mark in the night sky. He frowned and stroked the scar on his forehead. "It hurts again, doesn't it, your scar?" Hermione asked with concern. "I'm fine." Harry just felt a headache. Why does something happen every year when school starts? Last year it was Sirius Black, and this year it was the Death Eaters attacking the Quidditch World Cup and releasing the terrifying dark mark. Hermione followed the system's requirements and said to Harry, "You have to tell Sirius about this. You have to tell Black about what you saw at the World Cup and your nightmare. There must be a connection between them." Harry felt that the famous detective Hermione was right. Although Hermione's wonderful reasoning was sometimes funny, it was undeniable that she, who was knowledgeable, was more analytical and had her own opinions when dealing with these complex problems. Harry took out the magic book and put it on his legs, then took out the letter paper and started writing. Every time Hermione saw that they were still using this ancient method, she would sigh at the greatness of technology. If there was an internet, smart devices, WeChat, phone, QQ, and text messages here, wouldn't that be faster than writing a letter? Hermione was very impulsive and wanted to be a witch who changed the world. However, she was too lazy and felt that it was too troublesome. She decided to keep the status quo and live a good life. It was good enough for her. Let others change the world. Harry finished writing quickly and asked the pet owl beside him to start working. "Hedwig, go deliver the letter." This owl has been with Harry for a long time. Now it doesn't need a cage. Hedwig will stay by Harry's side obediently. It is very smart. Please support the new book. Thank you everyone. Chapter 283, Coming to Marvel and Becoming the Savior. On the train, Hermione was looking out the window boredly. She had been in the world of Harry Potter for a long time. She thought she would stay here, at least until graduation. But the next moment, the window glass began to fog up, as if it was about to freeze. This scene was particularly similar to last year, when the Dementors forced the train to stop in order to capture Sirius Black. Because of the special properties of depression, the windows and water cups froze directly. There shouldn't be Dementors this year, right? Hermione reached out and wiped it. Although she didn't remember what would happen in Hogwarts this semester, there shouldn't be Dementors. And because Hermione's time converter was so powerful last year, it almost never appeared again in the original movie. And Miss Hermione here, of course, would not fail to use this treasure. After Hermione wiped the window, a magical scene appeared. The window glass was like a small movie projected, with a blurry picture, like a reflection. "No one is watching a movie in the car?" Hermione was very curious. She took a closer look and felt that the image on the car window was familiar. She couldn't think of where she had seen it before. How strange. What was even stranger was that at this moment, a piece of iron suddenly flew out. Fortunately, Hermione was quick and caught it. Harry and Ron, who were standing by, also noticed Miss Hermione's strange behavior and asked curiously, "Hermione, what's wrong with you?" Hermione spread out her palm and saw that there was English printed on this strange piece of iron. "What is this?" Ron asked curiously. Hermione looked through it and hesitated. This seems to be a shrapnel?" "Shrapnel?" Harry was also stunned. Hermione was also surprised that a piece of shrapnel flew out of the car window and she picked it up. Suddenly, the shrapnel in Hermione's hand began to glow and heat up. Could it be? Damn, this scene seemed familiar. Yes. 3 or 4 years ago, Hermione, Lin Qingyun picked up an acceptance letter from Hogwarts, which led to her bizarre time travel. Now, a piece of shrapnel flew into the picture reflected outside the window. If she had known, Hermione would not have picked it up. Although it might appear in the pocket strangely the next day, that would be the next day, and at this moment, it can't escape today. Hermione. Harry and Ron both noticed that something was wrong with Hermione. Hermione smiled bitterly and said, "Goodbye, where are you?" Sure enough, the next second, Miss Hermione disappeared directly from the train. The terrifying space wormhole was like a tunnel with no end in sight. There was nothingness and lightning all around, and only Hermione was still teleporting. Isn't it just the soul that is being teleported this time? And the body. Time travel is usually the first and countless times. Hermione knew that this day would come sooner or later, but she didn't expect to wait for 3 or 4 years. But this time is not bad. At least Miss Hermione has accumulated a lot of strength in the wizarding world. Finally, the dazzling light appeared completely, and in the bright desert, Miss Hermione suddenly appeared from the wormhole. She was still wearing the Hogwarts uniform, with flaxen curly hair, and the space ring on her white finger was still there. Very good, the things inside were not missing. The magic in her body had not shrunk, and she had not forgotten the martial arts she had learned. Tathagata palm and sword drawing technique. The cautious Hermione didn't know where she was now, but she was cautious and still opened the system panel. Magic plus 62, Health plus 59, Low-key plus 55, Agility plus 60, Defense plus 59, Strength plus 54, Stealth plus 51, Pretty plus 8, Charm plus 8, Body plus 8, Skin plus 8, Wisdom plus 8, Gentleness plus 1, Soul plus 1, Optimism plus 1, Teasing plus 2, Good guy plus 1, Painter plus 1, Performance plus 1, Decisiveness plus 1, Silence plus 1. Very good, not shrunk at all. In other words, Hermione's accumulation of years of hard work in the wizarding world was brought intact to this new world. Although it was still on Earth, Hermione could clearly feel that the style of painting here was different. The air, time, latitude. Obviously, Hermione really traveled to a new world. I don't know if Miss Hermione will live for several more years in this time. Cautiously, she immediately put on the ominous sign, the witch's cloak, and the invisible cloak. Although it was a bit hot in the desert, but saving her life was important. There were enough supplies in the space ring, enough for Hermione to live here for a few years without starving to death, while eating, replenishing her physical strength. During the process of crossing, Miss Hermione found that she was actually hungry. Walking was too slow. Hermione took out the flying broom from the space ring, and it was okay. She could actually ride it, install a bicycle seat, and it wouldn't feel uncomfortable when sitting. Even if this is a new world, the elegant details are still there. At this moment, outsiders looked over and saw a broom with a bicycle seat installed on it, and then it was flying at a low altitude. The speed was not very fast, but it was very constant. The purpose of doing this was, first, to stay hidden at low altitude. Hermione didn't know where she had crossed to yet. This was a desert with only yellow sand, stones and hot wind. Not even an animal could be seen. Second, flying quickly at low altitude could save Hermione's magic power. Although flying at high altitude was fast and could see far, it was easy to expose oneself. Even if one was invisible, it was better to be cautious. Secondly, the saved magic power could also be used to deal with new unexpected situations. Although Hermione currently consumed less than 1% of her magic power per hour of flying, Miss Hermione still didn't want to waste it. That's right, she was so careful and low-key, no matter what time it was. After flying for less than 10 minutes, Hermione had a general understanding of the desert terrain here, and she finally heard movement. It was the sound of a car, and there was more than one. Miss Hermione immediately became excited. She was finally going to see a living person. I hope it's an Earthling, not an alien. However, before Hermione could check who was driving the car, the system finally stopped being silent and a pop-up window appeared. When traveling to a new world, The pop-up window interface has changed. In the wizarding world, the pop-up window style is mysterious and magical, but here, the pop-up window style has become a hardcore technology design style. Interesting. Option 1. Protect Tony Stark in the car from being blown up by shells. Complete the task and reward basic attributes +2. Option 2. Assassinate Tony Stark, so that there will be no Iron Man in this Marvel world. Complete the task and reward exclusive attribute, Demon, +2. Option 3. Build a Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry in the Marvel world. Complete the task and reward exclusive attribute, Magic, +2. Interesting. It's so interesting. Hermione looked at the system options in front of her repeatedly. She was confirming whether she was dreaming or everything was real. Until she confirmed that the system was not joking, Hermione was finally sure. She really traveled to the Marvel world. If I remember correctly, it should be the beginning of the first Marvel Universe movie. Iron Man, the future Iron Man, Tony Stark, who is still a playboy at the moment, is sitting in the military vehicle at the back. So, next, will Miss Hermione choose to assassinate him so that there will be no more Iron Man in this Marvel universe? Or should she build a Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry here and let me be the principal? I have traveled through Marvel Universe. Please support me. Thank you everyone. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 284 Iron Man. Hello, I am Hermione Granger, the witch from Hogwarts. Most people are already shocked by the time travel, and if they have to complete the strange tasks assigned by the system, they will probably collapse. But fortunately, the beautiful Lady Hermione, Lin Qingyun, has already been baptized by various funny and silly tasks in the Harry Potter world and is invulnerable. The mountain collapsed in front of her eyes and she remained calm. If Hermione was a demon, a villain, it would be very easy to assassinate Tony Stark at this time and make the Marvel world no longer have Iron Man. Moreover, it can also completely change the future pattern of the Marvel world. Option 3 is also interesting. Create a Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry in the Marvel Universe, and then as the principal, let countless owls take the admission notice of the magic school and distribute it throughout the universe. It's quite exciting to think about it. At that time, the Avengers will come to ask you to do something. When Thanos, one of the overlords of the universe, comes to Earth, the first thing he does is to pay homage to the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry founded by Hermione. It's quite exciting, but it's very troublesome, as a decent person who doesn't want to be a savior, but the system is the savior. Hermione feels that since she has traveled to Marvel, or, follow your own character, don't care about anything, don't care about this, don't care about that, don't care about anything. But since there is no such option in the system task, then be a savior for once. New here, you have to be handsome. Hermione is thinking about how to approach Tony Stark. The task only requires her to help him not be blown up by the bomb. This should be easy, as long as Hermione takes him away from here now, it will be fine. The first time to travel to Marvel, you should be gentle. Hermione took off her invisibility cloak and appeared directly in front of the road. Behind her was a flying broom. She looked like a Hogwarts witch school uniform, beautiful and watery like a fairy. She suddenly appeared in the desert and stood in the middle of the road. It was really a bit different. In the car, Tony Stark is very charming, although he looks like a middle-aged man. He is dressed in a handsome suit, a pair of sunglasses, and speaks humorously and confidently, especially when discussing picking up girls. I heard that all 12 cover girls of Maxim magazine last year had slept with him. The American soldiers at the side called him their idol and wanted to take pictures with him immediately. At this time, what greeted them was not the bombs of the attackers, but the beautiful and mysterious 15-year-old witch Hermione. Break. A row of military vehicles stopped. Sir, there is a girl with a strange appearance blocking the road ahead. Huh? She disappeared? The purpose of Hermione's appearance was just to make them stop. She put on the invisibility cloak again and disappeared from everyone's sight. As the most outstanding witch in Hogwarts who traveled through time, she must have pretended to be cool in the first page. Snap! The rear door of a military vehicle in the middle suddenly opened. This kind of car can usually only be opened from the inside, but Hermione knows magic. After traveling through Marvel, her magic has not shrunk at all. This little magic is nothing to her. Hermione's strength attribute is not low either. She can be called extremely powerful. She pulled off the soldier next to Tony Stark, then sat next to Stark and closed the car door. This scene happened in a flash. Open the door. Open the door. The soldier who was thrown out of the car began to knock on the door. Because Hermione was still invisible, he had no idea what was going on. Hermione's current magic proficiency does not require a wand for 99% of magic, but in order to show off, cough cough, in order to highlight the mystery and nobility of being a Hogwarts witch, she still took out her wand and waved it gently. Psychedelic spell. The soldier outside immediately became honest. He thought he was a stone and sat on the ground without moving. Although Miss Hermione threw him out, it was actually to save his life, because many people would die in the war later. Hermione is not a living bodhisattva. She only saved Tony Stark's life in the system mission. As for the lives of others, she doesn't care. The world is so big, she can't manage it. At this time, Hermione took off her invisibility cloak and threw it into the space ring. Young, beautiful, smooth and delicate skin without any flaws, exquisite and perfect facial features, and a golden ratio figure. Mysterious and noble Hogwarts school uniform. Undoubtedly, Miss Hermione Granger at this age is the most beautiful and charming girl. Tony Stark, the old man, was stunned. As the super-rich second generation in Marvel and the most famous playboy, he had seen countless women in his first half of his life, but he had never seen such a young and beautiful one, and her deep eyes like gems were full of mystery. However, she was too young. If she was more mature, Tony Stark would not be able to help but take action. Although Tony Stark was a playboy, he also had a bottom line. Tony Stark admired her, but he would not have any improper thoughts. Miss Hermione held the wand elegantly and waved it gently. The psychedelic spell controlled the two soldiers sitting in the front of the car at the same time. Drive, Hermione said softly. The soldier in the back seat was left outside. No one cared. The military vehicle continued to move forward. Tony Stark looked at the bizarre scene in front of him and knew more and more that he had met a master. He stopped pretending and took off his sunglasses and held out his hand to Hermione. Hello, my name is Tony Stark. May I ask who you are? Hermione did not shake hands with Stark, but said elegantly and mysteriously, "It doesn't matter who I am. You just need to know that I am here to save you." Save me? Tony Stark felt that he was protected by the army, and he said without worry, "Just don't come to kill me. I don't need you to save me." Tony Stark felt that his life in the first half of his life was colorful and there would be no danger at all. Suddenly, he heard the sound of a missile launch. Boom. A military vehicle in front was directly blown to pieces. The terrifying heat wave could be felt even through the car window. The huge shock wave directly lifted up the car behind, and then dropped it heavily, with sand and shrapnel flying everywhere. Miss Hermione understood that it must be one of the shrapnel that broke through the dimensional wall and flew into Hermione's hands on the Hogwarts train, causing Miss Hermione to travel here. It could also be the system's fault, otherwise it wouldn't be such a coincidence. Bang, 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 bang. The dense sound of machine gun bullets hitting the steel plates and iron sheets, crackling, blood and flesh flying everywhere. The battlefield of hot weapons is too terrifying. Iron Man is made for adults to watch, and the bloody scenes are naturally much more terrifying than Harry Potter. What's going on? Tony Stark panicked. He was in a hurry to get off the car. If another missile came, he would be finished with this car. Get off the car and quickly find a hidden place. Maybe there is still a chance to save your life. However, the director arranged it. How could Tony Stark run away? He had just gotten out of the car and found a place behind a rock wall. He took out his phone and asked for help when a missile flew over. The missile did not explode immediately. It fell on the sand as if someone had thrown it by hand. Tony Stark even had time to see the English letter production label on the missile less than 2 meters away. Yes, It was his own industrial company. Boom! Without any surprise, the bomb exploded. Please support my new book. Thank you everyone. Chapter 285 Marvel, Hogwarts jumps back and forth. Tony Stark, Marvel's most famous playboy, has lived a life that countless ordinary men envy. He usually travels with a large group of bodyguards wherever he goes. This time is no exception. 3 military vehicles are already a big show, but they can't resist machine gun missiles, which are thermal weapons developed by Tony Stark's own industrial company. Stark would never have thought that one day he would be in danger of his life. At such a close distance, the missile exploded. Unless he has the protagonist's halo, Tony Stark's head and eyes will be wrapped in shrapnel. In the original movie, the protagonist's halo is very strong. The head is intact, and there is no shrapnel on the legs and arms. Only the chest wearing a bulletproof vest was hit by shrapnel. The tragic reality is not so lucky. Fortunately, Miss Hermione Granger, who has studied magic for 3 or 4 years on the Hogwarts train, followed her system to the Marvel Universe and vowed to become the savior here. The first person to be rescued was the future Iron Man, Tony Stark, who was still a playboy arms tycoon. Tathagatapam. Miss Hermione's seemingly light palm scraped the ground 3 feet away. The heavy soil, plus the terrifying palm force, directly knocked the missile out. The deadly shrapnel and sand and stones attacked the enemy's area. At that moment, blood-fluent screams were heard. Hermione had no sympathy. War is like this. Either you die or you die. Anyway, I won't die. Miss Hermione has always been cautious in doing things. In order to avoid being hit by stray bullets, the best way to save her life is to attack. Petrify all. The spell turned all the enemies holding guns into sculptures. The next moment, drawing the sword, the tigerfish was unsheathed. This was a sword that would always strike the creatures on the ground and dare to face the power of thunder. Fast, ruthless, handsome, the sword flashed, and the stones and cars without petrification magic were all broken into 2 halves. Tony Stark opened his eyes wide. He had never seen such an unscientific and outrageous event in his life of studying scientific weapons. Magician, martial arts master, swordsman. Who is this beautiful woman whose skin is unreal? Is she a god? Let's go. After Hermione came back, she had already put the knife into the space ring. She took out the flying broom, grabbed Tony Stark and flew into the sky. She could have taken Tony Stark away just now, but bullets don't have eyes and are very fast. The cautious Hermione was worried about being hit by the bullet, so she chose to take action directly. After Hermione took Tony Stark away, the magic disappeared, and the enemy's guns began to break into 2 pieces, and then the stone-like body also broke into 2 pieces, and blood flowed all over the ground. Oh my god! Am I dreaming? Tony Stark's heart was tightening at this moment. It was too incredible. He was actually sitting on a broom and flying in the sky? Oh my god! This little broom is more flexible than a fighter jet. What is its driving principle? No, this is no longer a scientific field. This is divine magic. This is the power of God. Excuse me, are you a god? Tony Stark, who has spent his life studying beauty and technology, could not control his brain at this moment. It was too thrilling. Because of Hermione's savior, he was almost not injured except for the dizziness and ringing in his ears caused by the bomb in the car at the beginning. God? Hermione was not unfamiliar with this word. I remember that in the Hogwarts divination class, the divination professor also said that Hermione's future was God. Hermione, who has always been low-key, rarely made a high profile. She said, "It's okay for you to treat me as a god. There should be no danger below. Let's go down." Hermione still didn't want too many muggles to know that she could ride a flying broom. After confirming that it was safe below, Hermione took Tony Stark and began to land. The strong wind blew Tony Stark's hair. He was too excited at this moment. He couldn't help wanting to hug Hermione, but a current paralyzed his whole body. As expected, the goddess cannot be desecrated. After his feet landed on the ground, Tony Stark felt the feeling of a new life, which was so beautiful. Thank you, God. Thank you for saving me. Hermione wanted to say that it was nothing to mention, but she stepped on something with her feet. Then her face changed. God, What's wrong with you? Tony Stark noticed that the beautiful woman in front of him seemed to be a little bit wrong. Hermione squatted down and picked up the seemingly inconspicuous thing. A card in the desert. What is this? A train ticket? And it was a train ticket to Hogwarts. Miss Hermione opened her eyes wide. I thought she would come to Marvel to live for a few years before leaving, but I didn't expect it to be so soon. Goodbye. As the train ticket generated terrifying time-space shuttle energy, Hermione traveled through time again. As expected, don't pick up things on the ground casually. If you are not careful, you will travel through time. The train was covered with lightning and had already arrived at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Miss Hermione was still in her school uniform and appeared directly at the seat she left. Ron and Harry were still beside them. They looked anxious. After Hermione disappeared strangely, they had searched the entire carriage, but there was no sign of Hermione. The Hogwarts castle was right in front of them. Just when they were about to despair and planned to go to school to tell Headmaster Dumbledore, Hermione unexpectedly appeared in the same place again. Hermione, you finally showed up? What happened to you just now? We couldn't find you? Hermione was also a little confused. Although she had traveled through time for 3 or 4 years and was used to being a witch named Hermione, this was the first time she had traveled through time so quickly. She looked at the familiar Harry and Ron, and even the carriage was familiar. Only then did she slowly calm down, take a deep breath, and look at the train ticket in her hand. Hermione once again confirmed that traveling through the Marvel world just now and saving Tony Stark was not a dream. It's okay, I just went to the ladies' room. I don't think you guys have looked for the ladies' room. A perfect answer, but it was a little far-fetched. Ron and Harry looked at each other, but Hermione insisted on explaining it this way, and they had no choice. Don't leave without saying anything next time. It makes us worry. Hermione suddenly gave Harry a look and whispered to him, you worry too much. You forgot that I have a time turner. So, if I disappear again next time, tell Ron not to worry, I will be back soon. Smart Harry always felt that Hermione was hiding something from him. Her strange disappearance on the train this time didn't seem to be as simple as using a time turner, but Hermione didn't want to say it clearly, and Harry had no choice. All he could do was believe Hermione. Well, be careful about everything. Arriving at the familiar Hogwarts castle, although she had just left on the train for a few hours, it was a great stimulation for Ms. Hermione. She knew that this was the first time, and it would definitely not be the last time. There are so many superheroes in the Marvel universe, waiting for her to become the savior to save them, and more than just once is definitely not enough. Besides, her system has been constantly upgrading, and with this attempt, the next time will definitely not be far away. However, the sequelae of this incident is that Hermione began to walk very carefully, and even things that suddenly appeared under her feet or in the air would make her suspicious. If she picked up something she shouldn't pick up again, she was worried that she would travel through time again. If she suddenly traveled through time to the Marvel world to be a savior while taking a shower or going to the toilet, that would be too embarrassing. She is a god. There, I will go to Marvel again in the next chapter. Thank you all for your support. Chapter 286 Iron Man. We meet again. Huh? Where are your legs? Hermione's worry is absolutely justified, because her system is funny, and it can never be understood with normal thinking. Hermione doesn't want to suddenly appear in another world wearing a bath towel and slippers, or holding a toothbrush in her hand, with sleepy eyes. Because of the appearance of this unknown crossing, Miss Hermione has become more cautious. The sky of Hogwarts is not dark yet. In the afternoon, many wizard students have put on school uniforms and stood on the castle to watch the excitement. Because this year's Hogwarts is different from previous years, well-informed students have already known it. Everyone, don't squeeze. Coming. Harry and Ron also came over, and they brought Hermione, who seemed reluctant. Hermione doesn't want to go to crowded places now, but then she thought, if the system wants her to cross, she can't hide. Instead of being nervous every day, it's better to accept it calmly. Hermione, look, the dog licker. Ron wanted to share interesting things with the goddess, and Ron also felt that Hermione looked worried after arriving at Hogwarts from the train. He hopes that his goddess will always be happy. In the distant sky, the Pegasus pulling the carriage looked very much like the hippogriff Hagrid had raised last year, but it was a little different. It had wings and could fly, but it didn't have an eagle's head. It seemed that there were really many strange creatures in the wizarding world. The wizard students of Hogwarts were all watching curiously, and they were talking about all kinds of things. Below, the tall Hagrid raised his hands to direct the traffic of the Pegasus in the sky, and shouted, "Make way." However, the Pegasus in the sky was not polite and almost hit Hagrid directly. You don't see this every day. The students were all amazed. In the vast lake, a small piece of canvas first appeared, and then a very spectacular large ship floated on the water like a submarine emerging from the bottom of the lake. It was amazing, and the flag on the ship was printed with the logo of other magic schools. After watching enough of the excitement, time came to the opening ceremony in the evening. This year is undoubtedly more exciting than in previous years, but Miss Hermione has been very worried, because after she came from the Marvel world, her system seemed to have a bug. In the past, countless messy and funny options and tasks would pop up every day, but this time, there was no such thing. After returning from Marvel, the system was like a holiday, and there were no tasks. After doing multiple choice questions for 3 or 4 years, Miss Hermione was not used to it. It was not that she was a slut and liked to work, but she knew that the system was holding back a big move. Winter is coming, the savior system has begun to awaken, and the world will not be peaceful. Headmaster Dumbledore was dressed very solemnly today, as if he knew that he would welcome an important guest next. He wore reading glasses and walked to the stage of the auditorium. Facing the crowds of wizard students, he said, "Now that everyone has settled down, I will announce something. This castle is not only your home this school year, but also the home of some special guests." The classmates listened attentively, and the little wizards who knew the gossip had already guessed something. "Our Hogwarts has been chosen," Dumbledore said solemnly. "Hogwarts has been chosen to host a very prestigious event, the Triwizard Tournament." In the Great Hall, students began to discuss. Triwizard Tournament. What is this? The Triwizard Tournament was founded about 700 years ago. It is a friendly competition between the 3 largest magic schools in Europe. I heard that the Triwizard Tournament is held every 5 years, and the 3 schools take turns to host it. Hermione didn't say anything. She was waiting for the system to make a move. 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, or half a month, 2 months. She will definitely travel again, but she doesn't know when. Where will she travel to? Suddenly, a small stone fell on Hermione's desk. What is this? Ron has been paying attention to the goddess. The goddess is beautiful and pleasing to the eye, but today he is concerned about whether the goddess is worried. Don't move. Seeing that Ron seemed to take the stone away, Hermione stopped him. Hermione seemed to know what was going to happen next. In order not to cause unnecessary panic, Hermione tried to calm herself down. She didn't expect it to happen so quickly. She also hoped it was a false alarm, but she was cautious and told Harry seriously, "I'll explain it to Ron later." Harry frowned. He didn't know how to answer. Hermione reached out and grabbed the small stone that suddenly fell in front of her. Sure enough, it was the same feeling again. The terrifying wormhole appeared, and the space tunnel opened again cheaply as if it was free. Whoosh! Miss Hermione disappeared from her original seat. However, most wizard students were paying attention to the speech of Headmaster Dumbledore on the stage, and not many people paid attention to Miss Hermione. But Ron watched with his eyes wide open, and he was very shocked. After a long time, Ron asked Harry with trembling lips, Harry, did you give your invisibility cloak to Hermione? Why did she suddenly disappear again?" In order to make sure that he was not hallucinating, Ron reached out and grabbed the air on Hermione's original seat. Of course, all they caught was air. Harry was also shocked, but he was smarter than Ron. Harry reached out and touched the stool that Ms. Hermione had just sat on. It was still warm, which meant that Ms. Hermione was indeed beside them. Harry took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. He explained to Ron, we shouldn't have kept it from you. Last year, Hermione used the time turner Weren't you always curious about why Hermione suddenly appeared in class and why we suddenly came in from the door of the infirmary last year? Although reason told Harry that Hermione's strange disappearance this year must have nothing to do with the time turner, because Harry's feeling was not wrong. When using the time turner last year, Miss Hermione was very confident and felt that everything was under control. But this year, no. Starting from today on the train, she changed. She seemed to be worried about something and looked uneasy. This was rarely seen in the ladylike and calm Hermione before. But, before Hermione disappeared, she told Harry in person and asked him to explain to Ron. Harry could only say this. After Ron heard this, his not-so-smart brain immediately became even more confused. But Ron still grasped the key to the problem and asked, But why? Hermione is always so uneasy, and why did she suddenly disappear?" Although Ron was not very smart, he was not stupid. He felt that it had something to do with the small stone that suddenly fell just now. Ron raised his head and looked at the ceiling of the Great Hall. It was too high and he couldn't see clearly. He didn't know where the small stone fell from. Harry's brain was working at high speed. He thought of the far-fetched reason Hermione pulled out on the train, and now he answered, "Hermione is a girl. She must have had a stomachache, or she was embarrassed to tell us during those days when the girl was not feeling well. So she suddenly disappeared to go to the toilet. On the train during the day, she said she went to the toilet. It was far-fetched, but it was indeed the reason. Girls always have those days a month." As for Hermione, the moment she picked up the small stone, she traveled back to the Marvel world. But, the scene in front of her almost made her whole body crack. Iron Man, Tony Stark, where are your legs? Tony Stark's legs are gone. Can you believe it? Please support my new book. Thank you everyone. Chapter 287 Hermione the Savior travels through Marvel to save Iron Man and obtains Sharingan contact lenses. This is a dimly lit cave, dirty, messy, and even smells of rotting meat. Hermione holds a small stone in her hand. Yes, this small stone is from this cave. The case is solved. Ron, who is still attending the opening ceremony in the Hogwarts Great Hall, looked up at the ceiling. And it was not the small stone that fell from there. As the savior, Hermione successfully saved Tony Stark. This was her decision of one of three choices. At that time, the system had already prompted her to successfully complete the task. She thought that the next time they met, Tony Stark would be in his luxurious private seaside villa, or he would be healthy and strong in his Iron Man armor, fighting in the vast sky. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be even worse than in the original movie, lying in a dirty cave without legs waiting to die. Could it be? Hermione thought of something. Butterfly effect. Tony Stark was almost unconscious. Dr. Ethan, a doctor, was cleaning Stark's wounds. However, in this terrible environment, Stark would not live long with such serious injuries. Hermione's appearance here was too sudden. Tony Stark, who was lying down, did not notice the stunningly beautiful Miss Hermione at the first time. Although Dr. Ethan noticed it, Miss Hermione raised her hand gracefully, and the magic made Dr. Ethan lose himself. "What's going on?" Hermione came to Tony Stark and asked. Under the dim light, the light behind Hermione was like an angel descending. Tony Stark was about to burst into tears after seeing Hermione. The suffering he suffered in the original movie, he directly endured double here. That's right, it's the butterfly effect. What should have happened cannot be changed casually, even by God. If it is changed arbitrarily, it will only make the next story become Schrödinger's cat that is difficult to guess. Opening the box may be a perfect result, but on the contrary, it would be even worse. Tony Stark's eyes were blurred with tears. "God, you are finally here," Stark complained. "Not long after you left, they found me. They shot through my legs with bullets and sawed them off cruelly without any humanity. If it weren't for Dr. Ethan's treatment, I'm afraid I would have died." So that's how it is. The enemy's target is Tony Stark. After Hermione took him away, although the mission was completed, she traveled back because of the Hogwarts train ticket. As a result, Tony Stark was caught again. In order to vent his anger, the villain cut off Tony Stark's legs so that he could never escape again. Hermione said with some pity, "In your current situation, you won't live long." Tony Stark closed his eyes. He had been tortured for the past few hours. He had nothing to live for. He sighed and said, "God, take me to heaven." Hermione thought Tony Stark was quite interesting. He wanted to go to heaven after his death? You haven't done anything good in your life. Apart from drinking and having sex, picking up girls, the weapons you developed have taken the lives of so many innocent people. I'm afraid I can't take you to heaven. Are you going to hell? Tony Stark now has no hope of death. God, can you tell me in advance what hell looks like? At this time, the long-lost system option dialog box popped up in front of Ms. Hermione. Option 1. Use the time converter to take Tony Stark back to the past, change everything, and save Tony Stark's legs. Complete the task and reward a pair of Sharingan contact lenses. Option 2. Directly use euthanasia on Tony Stark, so that he can die decently in the end. Complete the task and reward the exclusive attribute, Decisive, +2. Option 3. Help Tony Stark avenge, kill all the enemies in the base, even the flies and reptiles here. Complete the task and reward the exclusive attribute, Ruthless, +2. Interesting. All +2? It seems that the task has been upgraded. Option 3 is a happy revenge, as the saying goes, leaving no one alive, and blood flowing like a river. The system options are so overbearing. Hermione was already very low-key in Hogwarts. When she traveled to Marvel, there was no such word as low-key in the system options. Has the savior attribute been concealed at all? However, Hermione also has a certain ability to protect herself here, so she doesn't have to worry too much. Option 2 is also quite interesting. Give Tony Stark a quick death? It means that the Marvel Universe will no longer need Iron Man in the future. However, what interests Hermione the most is option 1, which actually rewards Sharingan contact lenses. What the hell is this? Is this anime Sharingan contact lens decoration that sells for tens to hundreds of yuan online? Or does this special pair of glasses really have the ability of Sharingan? Sharingan is a good thing. After upgrading, it can summon Susanoo, Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi, Kami, Kotoa Mitsukami, etc., which are all quite awesome. I just don't know if it is a decoration worth dozens of yuan, or if it really has special ninjutsu. No matter what it is, option 1 is more valuable. Whether it is to give Tony Stark a good time or to help him get revenge, it cannot solve the most fundamental problem. As a foreshadowing, the time converter has not played its true ability in the Hogwarts story. Perhaps in this Marvel universe full of butterfly effect, it can really change fate. However, if it is not operated properly, the result will be like Schrödinger's cat, and the result is hard to say. Anyway, Miss Hermione is a god who has traveled through time and space, and the experimental subject is Tony Stark, not her. She only needs to do the experiment, and let Tony bear the consequences. Hermione made a decision, that is, to say to Tony Stark, who was already desperate, I can give you a chance now to help you get your legs back, but the result is hard to say. Even if I am a god, I can't control the changes in the destiny. Miss Hermione said it mysteriously. She is always so beautiful and her voice is so beautiful. In this somewhat dirty cave, she is so out of place like an angel. When Tony Stark heard that God still had a way, he immediately glowed with unprecedented excitement and vitality and asked, "Is there any other way?" Hermione smiled and nodded. She took out 2 lotus roots from her space ring and placed them under Tony Stark's lost legs. Then she performed an ancient and mysterious high-level forbidden spell. This was a high-level magic reward for completing tasks in Hogwarts. It was a spell that other wizards did not know. Under the magical effect of magic, Tony Stark transformed into a pair of lotus root legs again. Yes, that's right, it's not the perfect lotus root body likeness in the myth. After all, Miss Hermione is only a high-level magician now, and she is not a real immortal like Zinran. So lotus root is just lotus root, very brittle, and it can't give Tony Stark the touch and the effect of human skin and bones. But even so, Tony Stark was stunned. If he was given a laboratory, he could make a pair of high-tech mechanical legs for himself. But he, who has been studying technology all his life, never thought that one day he would have a pair of lotus root legs. Hermione said, "These legs are temporary. They can only help you walk. After a few hours, they will be useless. Chapter 288 Marvel, Hermione the Witch obtains the Sharingan. Even though Tony Stark could temporarily walk on his lotus legs, he was too weak and was out of breath as soon as he sat up. Here, drink this bottle of kidney tonic. Hermione took out a special potion. Tony Stark believed in the beautiful God in front of him, so he took it and drank it in one gulp without saying a word. It was different from what he imagined. He thought it would be hard to swallow, but it turned out to be sweet and delicious, like pumpkin juice. Hermione's alchemist's potion-making skills were perfect, and she could make any unpalatable potion taste as good as a drink. Do you feel better now? Tony Stark, who was very pale and dying just now, immediately had a red face and became energetic. It's amazing. It's just amazing. I feel my body is full of power. Tony Stark was so moved that tears welled up in his eyes and he said, "Thank you, God." Hermione nodded and didn't say much. Tony Stark's loss of his legs was also related to her. If she hadn't been nosy and saved Tony Stark, he would have been injured like in the original movie. Although a hole would inevitably be opened in his chest, it would be better than losing his legs. Thinking of Iron Man's attributes, Miss Hermione decided to make a change this time. She took out the time converter and put a long chain around Tony Stark's neck. "Next, I will take you back to the past. You don't have to be too surprised." Tony Stark honestly watched the apparition of the beautiful God in front of him. However, an unexpected situation occurred. Outside the cave, two enemies with guns came in to check the situation. However, after Hermione practiced the Tathagata palm and became a peerless master, her perception became extremely sensitive. She spotted the enemy first and waved her wand, a terrifying killing spell, splitting spell. The magic light hit the enemy who had just entered faster than a bullet. The next moment, they screamed and their bodies split into pieces at a speed visible to the naked eye. Is this a god, or a devil? How terrible! Tony Stark's forehead was covered with cold sweat. The goddess in front of him was so beautiful that she was suffocating. When she killed people, she was too terrifying. Hermione did this for a reason. Tony Stark was the one she chose to save at the beginning. In the end, not only did she fail to save him, but she also let Tony Stark's legs be chopped off alive. Since this group of enemies likes to dismember bodies, then Hermione will satisfy them with terrifying magic, tooth for tooth. The next moment, Hermione began to turn the clock on the time converter, and a scene that opened Tony Stark's eyes even more appeared. The light in the cave and the psychedelic Dr. Ethan began to retreat continuously. Everything that happened in the past few hours was retreating. After the time was adjusted, Hermione took out the flying broom and asked Tony Stark to sit on it. "Fasten your seat belts. We're off." This was the flying broom that Hermione had modified. It not only had a comfortable and user-friendly bicycle seat, but also a seat belt that could prevent people from falling off when flying at high speed. Tony Stark fastened his seat belt obediently, and looked at his legs swinging like lotus roots. His mood was extremely complicated. However, the next moment, whoosh, Hermione drove the flying broom and rushed out of the cave quickly. The enemies she met along the way were all hit by the fragmentation spell and turned into horrible pieces of meat on the ground. It was a sunny day at the entrance of the cave. The moment he came out, Tony Stark felt that he had been redeemed. Although he was trapped in the cave for only a few hours, it was the most difficult hell time in his life for Tony Stark. "Ah, I finally got out," Tony Stark couldn't help but said excitedly. Hermione poured cold water on him and said, "Don't be happy too soon. If you want to find your original legs back, maybe you have to come back to this cave in a few hours." Tony Stark was stunned. He asked fearfully, "God, you? What do you mean?" Hermione said humorously, "You are so smart, you will understand it yourself in a while." Hermione flew directly in the air on the broomstick, shuttling between the white clouds and the blue sky. Tony Stark had experienced the darkest time in his life, and now he was reborn. Although his legs had turned into lotus roots, he couldn't help but sigh. It's really great to be a god. Hermione thought of the first time they met, and she pretended to be a god to Tony Stark. Unexpectedly, she really became a god to him now. Hermione said meaningfully, "Gods also have their own troubles." Hermione flew so fast on the broomstick for the first time because she was worried that she would not have enough time. On the way, Hermione asked Tony Stark, "Do you want to become Iron Man and save the world, or do you want to go back to being a playboy, picking up girls, eating, drinking and having fun every day?" Tony Stark's choice determined how Hermione would save him. Iron Man? It was the first time Tony Stark heard this word. He asked curiously, "What does it mean?" Hermione explained simply, "It means helping people who are suffering, just like me." Tony Stark thought for a while and replied, "It's not easy to be alive this time. If I can choose, I think every day of my life will be meaningful. Although I don't know what Iron Man is yet, I choose the former." Hermione smiled. "Okay, but before you become Iron Man, you need to suffer a little more." As they were talking, the two came to the familiar desert. When Tony Stark saw the familiar military convoy below, he immediately felt like he was struck by lightning. Not only did his body tremble, but his spirit was also constantly roaring. He didn't notice it just now. Now he finally understood something. His lips trembled as he said, "God, could it be that we are now back in the past?" "In the car below," Hermione said. "Yes, in the car below as you a few hours ago. Let's go. Let's change history." As she spoke, Hermione flew low on her broomstick. The two landed on the roof of the car, but it was not over yet. Hermione put on her invisibility cloak and used magic to turn Tony Stark into a big rat. Tony Stark had never experienced such a magical thing in his life. First, the lotus root became a leg. Then he traveled back to the past. Now he was turned into a rat. God's power is too strong. For the first time in his life, Tony Stark wanted to hug his thighs. "I must follow this goddess in the future. She is so omnipotent." The invisible Hermione entered the car and sat in the co-pilot seat. The soldier who was sitting on it was thrown out by Hermione with magic. "Take out the rat that Tony Stark turned into and let it look at himself a few hours ago, well-dressed and handsome," until the car stopped. Hermione the witch from a few hours ago got in the car. It turns out that the God got in the car to save me. Tony Stark, now a rat, had mixed feelings. Finally, Tony Stark, who was sitting in the back, drinking champagne and wearing sunglasses a few hours ago, seemed to have discovered something. Tony put down his glass, took off his sunglasses and said in surprise, "Why is there a rat in your car?" "Rat?" Tony roared in his heart. "What rat? I am you a few hours later, you big idiot. Please support my new book. Thank you everyone." Chapter 289 Hermione is God. Iron Man is arranged. Those who have not experienced pain and suffering will never understand the importance of stability and health. Just like Tony Stark a few hours ago, every move and posture was so chic and romantic. Tony, who was turned into a rat by goddess Hermione a few hours later, wanted to punch him a few times. Rat, Hermione a few hours ago seemed to notice something. She looked at the empty passenger seat. Although there was no one there, it was obvious that two of her were in the same car at the same time. The butterfly effect is very scary, especially in the Marvel universe, where there is no protection from the rules of the Harry Potter world. A small change may bring terrible disastrous consequences. Besides, Hermione a few hours ago also had a mission. Otherwise, she would not have appeared in this car for no reason. In other words, the invisible Hermione here must ensure that there will be no problems with the previous mission, and at the same time, she must keep Tony Stark's legs. This is undoubtedly a task that requires very detailed operations. Very challenging. Boom. The terrifying and familiar explosion happened again. The military vehicle in front was blown into pieces. The fireball and heat wave produced by the explosion rolled over directly, and even rushed the car behind. Tony Stark a few hours ago was undoubtedly scared. Even a few hours later, Tony, who was turned into a rat, would be terrified to experience such a terrifying hot weapon war again. "Let's get out of the car." Invisible Hermione took Tony, the rat, out of the car directly, and waved her wand to change him back. Although he had drunk the kidney-tonifying potion given to him by Goddess Hermione, he was still very nervous in the hail of bullets. At the same time, looking at his lotus root legs, the hatred in his heart was also ignited. But at this time, Tony was more concerned about what he and God would do a few hours ago. Everything on the scene was almost the same as before, except that God was missing. A few hours ago, God killed a lot of bad guys, which led to the enemy's hatred value being full, and finally it acted on poor Tony Stark, and his legs were chopped off. Here, Hermione a few hours ago seemed to know something. Although she would take action, she only used magic to protect herself and would not easily kill people, even enemies. I'm hiding behind that rock again. Tony, with lotus root legs a few hours later, was very worried when he saw his previous self. Sure enough, the same missile exploded again at a close distance. Tathagata Palm Tony a few hours later finally saw it clearly. It turned out that the God only waved a palm, and its power actually caused an exploding missile to be knocked away. It's so scary. Tony with lotus root legs was very nervous. He kept swallowing his saliva, and finally he saw a different scene. Hermione a few hours ago suddenly disappeared. She left there alone, because she completed the task and went to find the train ticket to Hogwarts in the desert. The rest of the finishing work will be left to Hermione a few hours later. Tony with lotus root legs asked in panic, "Now that you've left, what should we do next?" The answer that shocked Tony Stark's worldview came from the beautiful goddess Hermione beside him. She took out the grenade that had been brought up countless times during the Hogwarts mission, but Hermione had never really used it. Tony Stark had seen Hermione's swordsmanship, magic, and shocking palm techniques, and thought that such an omnipotent god would not use human weapons. It turned out that Tony Stark was wrong. Hermione pulled the safety ring of the grenade, and then threw it in front of Tony, who had just been rescued a few hours ago. "Next, what we have to do is let you get blown up again." If it weren't for the sanctity and inviolability of the God, Tony Stark with lotus root legs would have been unable to help but curse. What a joke. Just dodged a missile, and now you're willing to let the grenade blow you up? Is this God crazy? But there's no time. Boom. The grenade exploded at close range, and the precise shrapnel directly blasted Tony Stark, who was a few hours ago away, and blood instantly dyed his whole body red. He was even almost disfigured. "God, do you want to kill me?" Although Tony, who had lotus root legs a few hours later, could not feel the feeling of being blown away by a grenade a few hours ago, it must have been very bad. Hermione turned back and said to Tony Stark, "This is the only option to save your legs. Otherwise, you may lose your arms next time." Yes, the butterfly effect is terrible. If Hermione arbitrarily changes the story that has been planned by God, then the consequences will develop in the unknown direction of Schrödinger's cat. Tony Stark, who had lotus root legs, turned pale. He felt that he vaguely understood something, but he felt that this matter was bullshit. In order to save his legs, he was blown up by God with a grenade. The shrapnel pierced Tony Stark's body a few hours ago, and the taste was simply terrible. There is only one step left. Hermione used magic to transform into the enemy, holding a gun in one hand and saying to the enemy in the distance with the other hand, "He is here, come." Speechless. Tony Stark with lotus legs has never been so speechless in his life. What on earth is this God doing? After attracting all the enemies, Hermione, who had turned into an enemy, immediately disappeared again. She really is like a god who does whatever she wants, dominating everything that happens. Returning to Tony Stark with lotus legs, Tony with lotus legs said sadly, "What are you doing? You let me get caught again." Yes, it's okay to be injured by a grenade, but he also attracted the enemy to come and catch himself again. Hermione replied, "Aren't you going to choose to be Iron Man? In order to avoid the ending of the story being out of control again, you continue to go back to the cave. This is the best result." Hermione comforted him instead. "Don't worry, you have the aura of the protagonist. You won't be killed so easily." Hermione said seriously, "If you really die, I will go back to the past and save you again." Hermione, who has a time converter, can have many opportunities to go back to the past and start over. Tony Stark, with lotus root legs, was in a very sad mood. He also felt that God was doing something that even she herself was not sure about. However, from here, he could see that a few hours ago, after being injured by a grenade, He was covered with a cloth bag by the enemy. This time Tony Stark did not escape, and at the same time, God did not kill and attract hatred. So the enemy did not abuse Tony Stark. It is certain that Tony Stark's legs were saved this time. But what about the shrapnel in his body? If it is not dealt with quickly, it will cost him his life. I don't want to turn into a mouse this time, Tony with lotus legs replied. Then Hermione turned Tony Stark into a big spider. Hermione turned invisible and used magic to successfully get on the enemy's car. This feeling is amazing. Just now, God was still in the military vehicle with the mouse Tony. Now, Hermione was sitting in the enemy's car with the spider Tony. The one who was injured by the grenade and wearing a hood a few hours ago was inside. Chapter 290 Marvel, Tony Stark, the big spider who will become Iron Man. The enemy's car was very stuffy and the facilities inside were messy. God. Hermione felt like she was back home in the car. The enemies controlled by the psychedelic spell would even regard Hermione as their leader. Although Tony, who had turned into a big spider, was very anxious, he always felt that God was playing the game. If he failed to pass the level once, he would try again. Anyway, she only lost time, while Tony Stark lost his life and body. This was too unfair. But who made this incredibly beautiful witch? God. Hermione used magic to suck out most of the shrapnel from Tony Stark, who was injured by her grenade, so that his legs, arms, and face would be intact. However, the goddess Hermione felt that the shrapnel in Tony Stark's heart was not deep enough, so she used magic to deepen it a little more to ensure that even the most powerful doctor could not remove the shrapnel inside. At the same time, it was necessary to ensure that the shrapnel could be absorbed by the magnet. If the magnet could not absorb it, then the game would have to start all over again. What did you do? Spider Tony saw that Hermione first helped another self to get rid of most of the shrapnel on his body, but the next second, as if the injury was aggravated, the masked Tony Stark vomited blood. Spider Tony felt that he was almost played to death by the goddess Hermione. Unfortunately, he was just a spider now, and even if he made a sound, others could not hear what he said. The enemies in the car were cast with magic, and they would not pay attention to the anxious spider in the car. The next moment, tragedy happened, and the big spider's leg fell off and turned into a lotus root. Miss Hermione picked it up calmly and said to Tony Stark, "Be honest, you are not a real leg now." Then she turned the lotus root into a spider leg and pressed it on. Tony Stark had never been so speechless in his life. He felt that he must have hurt too many women during the years when he became a playboy, which led to him being played by a beautiful goddess. The car was driven to a dilapidated base, where supplies were seriously lacking, but there were many weapons, all placed outside. Tony the spider was lying on the car window, looking outside. He was in a bad mood, because most of those weapons were developed by him. There must be some conspiracy, otherwise, this group of enemies would not have obtained so many weapons that should have been provided to the military. Tony Stark began to suspect the people in the company. When he returned alive, he must investigate thoroughly. At this time, a big bald man walked out of the enemy base. He had a fierce face and was obviously the leader of this group of bad guys. "Boss, this man is Tony Stark. He is the CEO of Stark Industries," the subordinates reported to the bald boss. "Damn, Obadiah Stane. The person who asked us to sneak attack was actually this military weapons genius." The bald boss began to think about the choice that was more beneficial to his own forces. Although he did not have a system, different choices could also determine the different fates of Tony Stark. "What should we do now?" After thinking for a while, the bald boss said, "Let's take him to shoot a video and send it to Obadiah Stane in exchange for a more generous reward. Also, let the doctor treat him so that he can help us develop more weapons while he is still alive." Big Spider Tony was very curious why the goddess Hermione used magic to cover his ears to prevent him from eavesdropping on the enemy's conversation. Because, after Hermione knew the horror of the butterfly effect, she was worried that Tony Stark would hear something he shouldn't hear in advance, which would eventually lead to an unknown change in the ending. Tony Stark, wearing a hood, was caught and taken off the car. He looked very desperate. although he didn't know that the grenade that injured him was dropped by the goddess who had just saved him. However, he was now seriously injured and in great pain all over his body. Although most of the shrapnel in his body had been removed by magic, the shrapnel in his heart was deeper. This almost killed him. Every step he took, he felt closer to death. He became a prisoner and was taken to shoot a video. Tony Stark didn't know who arranged to kidnap him. What he didn't know was that this group of people originally wanted to kill him, and only decided to kill him later after learning that he was a genius in military weapons. But he knew that if the God didn't come to save him again, he would probably die this time. But at this time, Tony Stark didn't know that this was his second time to come to this place. Back in the cave, Tony Stark, who was injured by the grenade, fainted due to excessive blood loss. Tony, who turned into a big spider, was extremely anxious. Hermione took out the time converter and looked at the time, and replied, "Don't worry, in half an hour, you will be able to return to the body with intact legs." Although his legs were saved, Tony Stark was still desperate. "But I'm still in this dark cave, and I'm so seriously injured. How can I escape?" "God," Hermione said, "you can study mecha." Hermione gave Tony Stark a hint. She took out her magic wand and drew the appearance of Iron Man in the air. Although her painting was not professional, Tony Stark obviously understood it. He was very surprised. This is a mecha? This is Tony Stark's best area. As expected of God, he woke up the dreamer with one word and made Tony Stark's mind enter a field he had never thought of before. This made Tony Stark's blood boil. He had a clear mind and immediately found the most important problem. "But how can I use energy to drive such a huge guy? It is definitely not reasonable to burn gasoline," Hermione reminded again. "Arc reactor." Tony Stark was like being struck by lightning. "Wonderful, so wonderful. But the equipment here is so simple. Can it succeed?" Tony Stark also understood that if he asked God to take him out directly, he might have unknown terrible results such as broken arms and legs. However, the method provided by God Hermione was not simple. "Do it boldly. If you succeed, you will be Iron Man," Hermione replied. "If you fail, I will take you to do it again." Tony Stark could only nod his head heavily to what God said. At this time, Hermione suddenly said, "Okay, time is up. Lie down." Tony Stark changed from a big spider to a lotus root with legs, then took a deep breath and lay on the dirty and simple hospital bed. Although God can help him, but if you want to really escape from the tiger's mouth, be reborn, and regain a new life, you still have to rely on yourself. Ding! The time is up. Tony Stark with lotus roots on his legs disappeared, and turned into a simple life-saving device with a doctor's whole body bandaged, a hole in his heart, and a magnet. The other end of the magnet uses a car battery as energy to absorb the shrapnel in Tony Stark's heart. Hoo-yah! Tony Stark woke up. He took a deep breath. His heart was like a broken bellows, and every breath of air was a burning pain. He sat up with difficulty. His body was very weak. The device on his chest was terrible, heavy and crude. However, his legs were saved. He stretched out his hands tremblingly and touched his legs. If you have never lost anything, you will not know how good it feels to have intact legs. It is simply tearful. Tony Stark has suffered too much in the past few hours. "Dr. Ethan, we meet again." Tony Stark even had a mood to greet the doctor beside him. Dr. Ethan was a little confused. You recognize me? Thank you for treating me." Tony Stark stood up tremblingly. He looked around the cave with the vicissitudes of life and said with emotion, "This is my second time here. Please support my new book. Thank you everyone." If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 291 Iron Man's Arc Reactor. Hermione's Sharingan. Tony Stark thought that Hermione had left, just like her previous operation. After finishing the work, she disappeared magically, but he never expected that she was still in this cave. Not only was she here, but she also gave Tony Stark a bottle of potion. Tony certainly believed in the potion of God, very much. He opened the bottle cap and drank it in big gulps. This time it tasted like Fat House Happy water. In an instant, Tony Stark felt like he was reborn, and his whole body was full of strength. This made Tony Stark feel much better immediately. On Hermione's side, the system finally belatedly prompted, "Congratulations on completing the Option 1 task, and reward a pair of Sharingan contact lenses." Is this thing strong, or is it just a decoration? Miss Hermione plans to study it carefully. At present, she still has no way to leave. She needs to pick up something special to leave Marvel and return to Hogwarts. In fact, Hermione didn't waste too much time this time, although she took Tony Stark to perform a series of operations. In fact, they were all using the time converter to go back to the past, and what was used was the past time. "I'll stay here and help you." Hermione currently had no way to go back, so she stayed in the cave to help Tony Stark. Tony was of course overjoyed, but suddenly a green hat fell from the cave. Weird. There was actually a green hat in this cave. Hermione was helpless, and quickly said to Tony Stark, "You'd better take care of yourself." After that, she grabbed the green hat, and then Hermione was pulled into the time and space channel, and quickly disappeared in the world of the first movie of the Marvel Universe. Tony Stark was helpless, worthy of being a god, so characterful. Dr. Ethan was the doctor who originally helped Tony Stark in the cave. If it weren't for him, Tony Stark would have died in the original movie. Later, Tony Stark's Iron Man armor also had his help. Otherwise, it would be difficult for Tony Stark to complete it alone. "Who were you talking to just now?" Tony replied, "I was talking to myself. Don't mind. Let's get started." Dr. Ethan didn't understand. "Start what?" Tony Stark smiled but said nothing, although he still couldn't avoid a hole in his chest in the end. Fortunately his legs were saved. In fact, with the power of God, it would be very easy for her to cure Tony Stark's heart shrapnel. The reason why it is still like this is probably the disaster that Tony Stark is destined to have. Even God cannot tamper with it at will, otherwise the consequences will be even worse. After a painful experience, Tony Stark can now adapt to his current difficult environment more quickly. At the same time, it is also because God Hermione has provided him with a new direction. Iron Man. First of all, it is an energy problem. Because the chest magnet uses a car battery to power it, Tony Stark needs to carry a large battery in his hand whether he is walking or lying down, which is very troublesome. Maybe the arc reactor mentioned by God Hermione can be built by Tony Stark to solve the problem of heart shrapnel first. It must be small, powerful, practical, and cool. As for Ms. Hermione, she picked up the green hat that had suddenly fallen into the cave, and the next second she was back in the Hogwarts Great Hall. This year's unprecedented opening ceremony was naturally not over yet. Miss Hermione had not been away for more than 10 minutes. Hermione? Ron, who was beside him, saw the beautiful and enchanting Hermione suddenly appear, and he was happy and confused. According to Harry's previous reasoning, Hermione should have gone to the toilet, but why did she suddenly disappear and suddenly appear? Is this a kind of magical magic? That's right, Hermione is well educated, and she naturally knows a lot of magic. Harry gradually began to accept the elusive Hermione. He noticed the thing in Hermione's hand and asked curiously, "Hermione, the green hat in your hand?" Ron was surprised and said, "It's mine, I kept it with me." "How could it be?" "Damn it, I actually lost the green hat you gave me, Hermione." Hermione smiled and said, "It's okay, I'll give it back to you." At the same time, Hermione stretched and said, "I'm really tired." This whole day, running back and forth between the two worlds, not only did it take a lot of physical strength and magic, but also a lot of thinking and exploration, which was really tiring. However, now that she knows the opportunity to shuttle back and forth between the two worlds, Miss Hermione can better adapt to all these new things. "Where are you now?" Ron replied, "The Triwizard Tournament." Or talking about this, Ron knew the time when Hermione disappeared, and now she came back. The interval was not long. Hermione nodded. She was racing against time in the Marvel world, and now she came back to relax. The Hogwarts Great Hall is already magnificent. The annual opening ceremony is already very lively, And the Triwizard Tournament, which only happens once every 5 years, is even more interesting. This is in stark contrast to Tony Stark, who is suffering in the cave in the Marvel world. Just like in the mythological story Journey to the West, Sun Wukong is pressed under the Five-Finger Mountain, while the Heaven is enjoying a life of luxury and pleasure with singing and dancing and feasting on fish and meat. Fortunately, Sun Wukong and Tony Stark are both male protagonists, and the suffering is only for the moment, and they will achieve success later. Unlike in tragic movies and TV shows, it is all suffering from beginning to end, and only death is the liberation. There is no halo of the protagonist. There is no way. Now, please join me in welcoming the lovely ladies from Buxbaton's Academy of Magic. Principal Dumbledore spoke with emotion on the podium, and at the same time, the door opposite opened, and their principal, Miss Maxime. A row of mature-looking female wizard students wearing elegant ladies' hats and beautiful skirts danced in. As they grow older, the immature little witches have now become mature girls. One of the leading witches was quite pretty. If Miss Hermione Granger wasn't so beautiful, perhaps this elegant girl from Buxbaton's Academy of Magic could also be better than Miss Hermione Granger. But Miss Hermione here is so beautiful that ordinary people can't compare with her. Whether it's temperament, skin, figure or beauty, they can't compare with Miss Hermione Granger. So many witches from Buxbaton's Academy of Magic dance beautifully, but they won't surprise the male wizards of Hogwarts. After all, in the past 3 or 4 years of Hogwarts, their eyes have been raised by the stunning Miss Hermione. Girls who can compete with Miss Hermione in beauty have not appeared yet. Hermione thought she could take a quiet rest, but unexpectedly, the system option popped up. It turns out that you don't have to travel through Marvel to have a task. Returning to Hogwarts will also trigger the option task, and the previous one has not changed. Option 1. They can't dance well. Let me go on stage and show them what real dance is. Phoenix Dance plus Sexy Wildcat. Complete the task to reward basic attribute +1. Option 2. What's the point of just dancing? Sing. Do skits. Let the students of Buxbaton's School of Magic feel what a party is, what it means to show talent. Complete the task to reward exclusive attribute, talent, +1. Option 3. Let's just sit and drink tea. I'm a lady. I don't need to compete for beauty. I can just enjoy my beauty alone. Complete the task to reward exclusive attribute, quiet, +1. Chapter 292 Hogwarts, Female Giant, Sharing in Magic Competition. In the cheerful atmosphere, the students of Hogwarts were watching the show seriously, especially the graceful figures of the witches from Buxbaton's School of Magic. After all, it was almost impossible to pick up Goddess Hermione in Hogwarts. Even the arrogant Master Malfoy chased her for 3 years, but got nothing in the end. It can't be said that he didn't get anything at all. At least he tasted different flavors of spicy strips from Miss Hermione. But Miss Hermione began to face the funny and silly options of the system again. Phoenix dances in the sky. Little Wildcat, what a joke. She is a senior goddess of Hogwarts. If she really dances on the spot, Hermione is afraid that they can't stand it. A lady naturally has to do what a lady would do. It's very tasteful to appreciate it alone. Hermione likes it. After quietly appreciating the dance of Buxbaton's School of Magic, the system on Miss Hermione's side also prompted, "Congratulations on completing the Option 1 task. Reward exclusive attribute, quiet, +1, elegant dance posture, graceful figure, and magic to transform colorful butterflies during the dance, which is very enjoyable." Men naturally cannot change their habit of liking to look at beautiful women. In the original series, Ron was fascinated. It was not until a giantess-like headmaster of Buxbaton's Academy of Magic appeared that Ron finally came to his senses. Oh my god, what a giantess! Ron might have a guilty conscience. No matter how beautiful his wife was, he would not be able to resist the urge to cheat. Ron looked back at Hermione from time to time. Hermione thought he was boring, and she would not really become his wife here. He liked to look, so he looked more. Dumbledore personally trotted over to greet her, and his image was a bit funny. The only person who saw the giantess headmaster and was moved was probably Hagrid, who was also a giant. In the wizarding world, especially in the wizarding world in the movie. It is not easy to meet a giantess. Next, please welcome our friends from the north. After the giantess headmaster of Buxbaton's Academy of Magic sat down, Hagrid paid attention to her from time to time. Of course, the headmaster also saw it. After all, Hagrid was also a giant, so he was quite conspicuous. However, the headmistress of Buxbaton's Academy of Magic was very calm, unlike Hagrid, whose heart was pounding. Welcome the proud students from Durmstrang, and their headmaster, Igor Karkaroff. As the headmaster of Hogwarts, Dumbledore naturally had to introduce the third magic school of the Triwizard Tournament. The gate in front had been opened, and a group of strong men with very short hair, almost bald, holding magic iron rods in their hands, took a step, hit the ground, and strode in with a very special etiquette. The momentum was overwhelming, completely different from the Buxbaton's witches who were dancing and surrounded by butterflies just now. The two magic schools would make people mistakenly think that they are boys and girls schools, but in fact, they are co-educational schools like Hogwarts. It's just that this time the Triwizard Tournament should have been discussed. Buxbaton's School of Magic brought all tall and good-looking witches, while Durmstrang's School of Magic brought all muscular strong men. In the game King of Glory, this is like a group of weak and beautiful female wizards in the middle lane, and a group of strong male tanks on the side lanes. "Oh my god, Victor Krum!" Ron exclaimed. During the Quidditch World Cup, Ron showed that he was a fan of the star Victor Krum. Although in the original movie, Ron's idol was the only man who cheated on his wife, which seemed ironic. Of course, Krum here has no chance at all. In the original movie, Hermione was fascinated by Krum's explosive muscles. However, the Lady Hermione here has no interest in muscular men. Strictly speaking, she is not particularly interested in any of the men she has come into contact with so far. Krum is very strong. He is coming from the back with their male headmaster. Headmaster Igor Karkaroff holds a golden scepter in his hand, which looks very imposing, but in fact, this headmaster is full of stains. Igor Karkaroff was a Death Eater when he was young. He was captured by Mad-Eye Moody after 6 months of pursuit and sent to Azkaban. Such a person was able to become the principal of Durmstrang School of Magic and Wizardry later, which also shows that Durmstrang School of Magic and Wizardry is not a serious and decent magic school. They all wore thick coats, as if they came from the snowy mountains. Igor Karkaroff didn't look like a good person, but when he met Principal Dumbledore, he still opened his arms and hugged him warmly, saying, "Albus, Igor." The two looked like old friends, but only in appearance. You know, Dumbledore is a 98%, almost 100% decent legendary male wizard, except for a small stain of ignorance when he was young. He is almost a model of decent wizards. It's completely different from Igor Karkaroff. At this moment, it was raining heavily outside Hogwarts, and a lame man came quickly, stepping roughly on the puddles. When he stopped and looked at the Hogwarts castle, he took out a small hip flask and took a sip. He was Mad-Eye Moody, who was invited by Headmaster Dumbledore to serve as the defense against the dark arts professor for Harry's 4th semester since he started school. This position is really poisonous. Anyone who sits in this position for a full year must get out. The real Moody is even worse. He hasn't come yet, but he has been impersonated. The Mad-Eye Moody who appeared at this moment was a fake, but Dumbledore asked him to come to Hogwarts. In addition to teaching students defense against the dark arts, the most important point was to let Moody supervise Igor Karkaroff, the headmaster of Durmstrang School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. But man proposes, God disposes. The devil is always stronger than the righteous. The fake Moody took the opportunity to enter Hogwarts. The Great Hall was very lively at this moment, with wizards from 3 magic schools sitting together, especially the professors sitting up there. In previous years, new professors would be shown off, but this year, new professors are certainly not qualified. The principals of the other 2 magic schools and those new-faced wizards are the protagonists. Professor Snape still had a paralyzed expression and sat there without saying anything, but his eyes kept looking at Harry Potter from time to time, worried that the 3 never-honest wizard students would make trouble again. Hermione felt bored, so she used the time converter again. This was her magic weapon, A very practical thing. Of course, she would not put this thing in the space ring and sleep, because she couldn't wait to know what the reward, Sharingan contact lens, she got after completing the task in the Marvel world was. Just now, she didn't have time to take it out to check. If she waited quietly for the opening ceremony to end, it would probably take a long time. She didn't want to wait. Back in the past, Hermione wore a school uniform and went directly to the dark forest. She was used to being low-key in Hogwarts, so she naturally didn't want to attract too much attention. Take out the Sharingan contact lens in a beautiful glasses case. Hermione cleaned her snow-white fingers, and then put them on herself with a little excitement. Most girls who love beauty have the experience of wearing contact lenses, just like doing manicures. Hermione is a girl. She also loves beauty, but she rarely does these things. At most she draws eyebrows, puts on a moisturizing mask or something. She feels that light makeup, natural beauty, and more comfortable. After all, she is naturally beautiful, and there is no need to do those things that are too fancy. Before she traveled through time, Hermione, Lin Qingyun, did try big eye contact lenses, but she felt uncomfortable, so she didn't wear them later, just to try it out. Now the Sharingan contact lenses, rewarded by the system, are indeed of guaranteed quality. After putting them on, they are very comfortable and natural. The next moment, the Sharingan contact lenses fit perfectly with Miss Hermione's beautiful big pupils, and the strange power began to condense on the pupils. Hermione closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, she saw a pair of Sharingan with 3 magatomas suddenly appeared. Please support the new book. Thank you everyone. Chapter 293 Hogwarts, Not So Smart. This is a completely different feeling from magic. It is power. It is the invincibility brought by the sharp blade when both hands are tightly grasped on the long sword. What a wonderful eye technique. Miss Hermione has some impressions. She remembers that in Naruto, you need to go through super painful things before you can successfully stimulate your emotions and upgrade your Sharingan. For example, Akaya, because his beloved Nohara Rin died in front of him, he opened the Mangekyo Sharingan directly. After Hermione puts on the Sharingan contact lenses, she can get the 3 Magatama Sharingan. This level of eyes can copy and understand the enemy's behavior, and even ninjutsu. At the same time, you can also use some illusions simply. It's a bit troublesome to upgrade the Sharingan. It's impossible for Hermione to kill Harry and temporarily upgrade the Mangekyo Sharingan, then kill Ron and upgrade to Susanoo. Even if they really kill each other, they don't deserve the position in Hermione's mind. Unlike Sword Art and Tathagata Palm, if you want to upgrade the Sharingan contact lens, it is almost impossible to rely on practice. You must establish brotherhood, and then watch your brother die, and finally the Sharingan can be upgraded. So perverted. Hermione also thought of some small details, such as why the Sharingan rewarded by the system is a pair of contact lenses. Because in the original Naruto drama, ordinary people want to get the Sharingan, and there is almost no other way except digging out their eyeballs. One of the famous Kakashi's Sharingan was transplanted from Akaya eyes. Miss Hermione's watery big eyes are not bad, but digging them out and replacing them with Sharingans always feels a bit cruel. Simply, the system is very user-friendly, directly replacing the ninjutsu ability of the Sharingan with a pair of contact lenses. As long as you wear them, you can exert the power of the Sharingan by matching the original eyes. This is indeed a wonderful way. Otherwise, the system will directly reward Hermione with a pair of eyes, and dig out her own eyes and replace them with Sharingan. Even if Hermione knows that Sharingan is very powerful, she may not do it. After all, she can't dig out her original beautiful big eyes for a pair of Sharingan. Besides, her magic is not much worse than Sharingan. After experiencing the power of Sharingan contact lenses, Hermione put them away and returned to the Hogwarts Great Hall. Tonight's opening ceremony is undoubtedly not over yet, and it has reached the most critical moment. Principal Dumbledore, my horses have traveled a long way and they need care, the giantess headmaster of Buxbaton School of Magic said to Dumbledore, and now everyone is enjoying the food. Don't worry, Madame Maxime, Our caretaker Hagrid will take good care of them. Dumbledore trusts Hagrid very much in taking care of magical creatures. No one in Hogwarts knows better than Hagrid. The female giant headmaster looked at Hagrid. Both of them were half giants. At the opening ceremony tonight, only the two of them were of the same kind. The female giant seemed to have some doubts about Hagrid, because he looked dull, silly, and not very smart. But you have to know, Mr. Hagrid, they only drink single malt whiskey. The female giant headmaster reminded Hagrid. Hagrid fell in love with the female giant headmaster at first sight. He was stunned and looked even more stupid. After dinner, please pay attention. Dumbledore stood up again and spoke, and this time he started to announce things very importantly. I have a few words to say. Eternal glory is waiting for the student who wins the Triwizard Tournament. However, that student must first complete 3 tasks. 3 extremely dangerous and difficult tasks. The wizard students below all looked up, and Ron's twin brothers said with interest, "Very good, very good." In view of the above reasons, the ministry has issued a new regulation. Dumbledore continued to speak. At the same time, a person came in from the front door and the back almost at the same time. The one who came in through the back door was Mad-Eye Moody, who had just come out of the heavy rain alone. Of course, he was a fake. The person who came in through the front door was someone Harry, Ron and Hermione had met before. He was the director of the Ministry of Magic's Enforcement Department, who stood out for his stupidity and incompetence at the Quidditch World Cup. A very detailed thing is that the fake Mad-Eye Moody who came in through the back door was actually the son of the director of the Ministry of Magic's Enforcement Department. Very detailed, right? It's very storytelling, right? Only those who noticed this can enjoy the show and have a great time watching it. Miss Hermione had just come back from the time converter, after figuring out the Sharingan contact lenses, but she didn't expect the system to immediately issue a new task. Option 1. Expose Mad-Eye Moody as a fake in public, and let his true identity as a Death Eater be completely exposed to everyone. Completing the task will reward you with basic attribute +1. Option 2. Go up and tell Barty Crouch, the head of the Ministry of Magic's Enforcement Department, that the mastermind of the Death Eater attack at the Quidditch World Cup and the person who released the dark mark into the night sky was the fake Mad-Eye Moody. Completing the task will reward you with the exclusive attribute, Detective, +1. Option 3. Take out 2 pieces of fresh breath mint chewing gum and share them with Ron and Harry. Completing the task will reward you with a box of ear-cleaning cotton swabs. If this were in the Marvel world, perhaps Hermione would choose the first 2 options. Miss Hermione grew up and became stronger in the wizarding world, so she was used to keeping a low profile in the Harry Potter world. She was really not used to being so high profile in public, although she was not afraid of Mad-Eye Moody. But traveling through the Marvel world is different. First of all, the system option task implies that Hermione is the savior. At the same time, she came and went in a hurry, and Hermione was already very strong after traveling through the past. Just like I would be very low-key in the real world, but in the game world, I would be very arrogant and fight 5 people alone. If Hermione had grown up slowly in the Marvel world from the beginning, she would have kept a low profile. When she had the ability and traveled to the Harry Potter world, she would have been just as arrogant. This was a matter of habit, and it was not impossible to change. It was just that Hermione felt it was unnecessary. If she stood out too much, it would definitely break her original lifestyle and make more people notice her. She was not used to it. It was different in the Marvel world. Hermione could just pretend to be a god. In the Harry Potter world, Hermione still felt that it was more comfortable to keep a low profile and make a fortune quietly. So option 1, exposing the fake Mad-Eye Moody in public, or option 2, telling Barty Crouch that your son was the mastermind of the Quidditch World Cup attack. Miss Hermione felt that it was inappropriate. In the wizarding world, she didn't want to be a god, just an ordinary happy and carefree fairy. So, Hermione took out 2 pieces of chewing gum and handed them to Ron and Harry beside her. Although the 2 of them didn't quite understand Hermione's actions, they would naturally not refuse the friendship of 3 or 4 years of classmates. Congratulations on completing option 3, and you will be rewarded with a box of ear-cleaning cotton swabs. In the field, Headmaster Dumbledore certainly didn't know the choice that the most beautiful witch Miss Hermione had just faced. He began to introduce solemnly, "Please invite the director of the Department of International Magical Cooperation to give further explanations." Mr. Barty Crouch. Let me tell you, Barty Crouch looked like an ordinary old man, without any momentum. He came to Hogwarts just for work. He also noticed Mad-Eye Moody, who had just entered the door. This fat wizard looked so ugly, with a big belly, greasy clothes, wet and tasteless clothes, and a fake eyeball protruding from the eye socket, which looked particularly scary. Chapter 294 Marvel, Here I Come Again. As long as you look boldly, there are many interesting stories in every place in the Hogwarts Great Hall. For example, Hagrid and the Giantess Headmaster. For example, the former Death Eater Headmaster of Durmstrang School of Magic, and Krum, who really cheated on Ron in the original movie, but Krum is still Ron's idol. Of course, the most metaphorical and exciting ones are the father and son of Barty Crouch, the director of the Ministry of Magic's executive department. They appear at the same time, but the stupid and incompetent Barty Crouch doesn't know it at all. The fake Mad-Eye Moody thought he could hide the truth, but he didn't know that he could stand here safely now just because Ms. Hermione likes to keep a low profile. If Hermione had a little bit of a god character in the Marvel world, the fake Mad-Eye Moody would be put into the urn here directly. In the original movie, in order to show the magical strength of Mad-Eye Moody, it was not too much to have a sudden lightning and thunder when it had been raining heavily outside. There is no advanced lightning protection equipment in the castle. The lightning struck the roof directly. At this time, Mad-Eye Moody quickly took action and waved his wand to cast magic, using powerful magic to disperse the lightning in the sky. Unfortunately, Mad-Eye Moody had no chance to show off, because God did not allow lightning to fall on Hogwarts Castle. Maybe God felt that there was no need for it since there were only great wizards of the demon level here. However, Ron, who was chewing gum, still saw that Mad-Eye Moody and exclaimed, "Damn it! It's Mad-Eye Moody, Alistair Moody." Hermione also pretended to cooperate and continued, only Harry knew the least, because his setting was like this. To catch dark wizards. Ron explained, he knew this and it was rare for him to show his wide knowledge. He caught half of the prisoners in Azkaban, but he is always crazy now. Ron showed his fear of such people. Even with Barty Crouch present, there were still many wizard students who stared at Mad-Eye Moody as soon as he arrived, and the terrifying fake eye in Mad-Eye Moody's eye socket quickly locked onto Harry among the many wizards below. Dumbledore came over and extended his hand to Mad-Eye Moody in a friendly manner. "Dear old friend, thank you for coming. It's just that you came a little late." If Mad-Eye Moody hadn't been late, he would have solemnly introduced the new defense against the dark arts teacher at Hogwarts before introducing the Triwizard Tournament. Mad-Eye Moody didn't say much. He also extended his hand and shook hands with Dumbledore. The next moment, Mad-Eye Moody turned around, took out something like a small wine flask from his body, raised his head and took a big gulp. "What do you think he drank?" Ron was curious. Harry answered without much interest, "I don't know. It's not pumpkin juice anyway." In the field, everyone's attention was once again focused on the director of the Ministry of Magic's Enforcement Department. After all, he was now the protagonist in the Hogwarts Great Hall. He did not even cough, and directly made a heavy speech that many wizard students were not prepared for. After careful consideration, the Ministry of Magic finally decided that for safety reasons, all students under the age of 17 are not allowed to sign up for this Triwizard Tournament. It was really cruel. One sentence directly offended all wizard students under the age of 17 in Hogwarts. This naturally caused a large-scale noise. The incompetent director of the executive department of the Ministry of Magic did not realize that there was a problem with his speech. Speaking on stage is a science, and clever speeches can avoid many unnecessary conflicts. And the incompetent Barty Crouch's one sentence caused opposition from the whole audience, which was also amazing. "This is the final decision." Barty Crouch also affirmed his previous speech. "Bullshit decision." The Weasley twins were very dissatisfied, because they were not old enough, so naturally they did not even qualify for this Triwizard Tournament. "Do you know what you are talking about? How can you do this? This is so unfair." Most of the wizard students who were not old enough were strongly dissatisfied, and the scene even lost control for a time. Quiet. In the end, it was Dumbledore who took action. He roared. It was the first time in 3 or 4 years that the wizard students saw Headmaster Dumbledore get angry. For a moment, all the wizard students in the audience fell silent. Dumbledore did not explain too much about Barty Crouch's speech just now, because no matter how he explained it, he could not change the regulations of the Ministry of Magic. It was the smartest way to just let it go. Next to Dumbledore and Barty Crouch was a treasure chest of considerable size. Dumbledore took out his wand and waved it over. The treasure chest dissipated, revealing a huge trophy inside, half the height of a person, and the shape was relatively simple. It was very dim at first, but then a light blue flame emerged. With the blessing of the flame, it was instantly different. Very mysterious, very tall. This is the Goblet of Fire. Headmaster Dumbledore began to introduce. Students who have signed up for the tournament, please write your name on parchment and throw it into the fire before this Thursday night. Please be careful when signing up. If you are selected, there will be no way out, because from that moment on, the Triwizard Tournament has begun. Dumbledore's authority is still very strong. When he spoke, all the wizard students in the audience listened very honestly. The opening ceremony of the Great Hall finally ended. Tonight was wonderful. Hogwarts Castle is very big. The deputy headmaster and the prefects took the wizard students from the other 2 magic schools to stay in the arranged rooms. This year, Hogwarts is destined to be very lively again. Hermione also washed up and prepared to go to bed. She was also very tired today. When people are sleepy, they can fall asleep as soon as they close their eyes. However, what the beautiful Miss Hermione never expected was that in her dream, she was walking alone on the road and suddenly picked up something. Pick it up and take a look. Damn, it's a piece of metal iron. Could this be? That's right, because Miss Hermione picked up something from another world in her dream. She traveled through time again. Your system is amazing. The noise of traveling through time was so loud that Miss Hermione naturally woke up instantly. There was no other way. In order to take care of her identity and image, Hermione quickly changed her snow-white pajamas and put on a wizard's robe, looking like a witch instantly. If nothing unexpected happens, it must be the Marvel world again. Sure enough, in the familiar cave, Tony Stark was installing the already manufactured arc reactor on his chest. Dr. Ethan on the side was a little nervous. Every operation is accompanied by risks, and the environment and equipment in this cave are too simple. If it is not good, Tony Stark will die of infection, shock and death. In the original movie, Tony relied entirely on the powerful protagonist's halo to avoid any medical accidents. Ordinary people in reality are definitely not so lucky. After all, it is difficult to open a hole in the chest in such a simple cave without unexpected situations. Tony Stark first saw a dazzling light appear, and he knew that his patron saint had come. God, you are here. Tony Stark was lying on the hospital bed, very weak again. Dr. Ethan on the side was under a spell. As if he did not notice the witch Hermione who suddenly came through, he continued to concentrate on performing chest surgery on Tony Stark. Even though Dr. Ethan had superb medical skills, it was inevitable that a lot of bleeding occurred, and Tony Stark's wound was difficult to heal for a while. It takes 100 days to heal a broken bone. Tony Stark has a hole in his chest, and now he has to replace the arc reactor. That's not that easy. Ordinary people will definitely have a body rejection reaction and die. Among them, light nuclear radiation is difficult to solve. Please support my new book. Thank you everyone. Chapter 295 Marvel, I Am the Savior. The arrival of Miss Hermione made this small cave bright and beautiful. Tony Stark was no longer as desperate as he was at the beginning, but his current situation was not optimistic. Dr. Hermione stepped forward and cast a spell. Tony Stark, who was originally drowsy, immediately became energetic and full of vitality. At the same time, the huge wounds on his body began to heal. Dr. Ethan sighed. Miracle of life. Stark, your life is too strong. Tony Stark smiled while lying on the hospital bed. All this was attributed to God, who was also his savior. Otherwise, he would not be able to be so relaxed. Miss Hermione had also done similar research on the problem of the arc reactor. After all, when she was in the first year of Hogwarts, Miss Hermione had obtained the Philosopher's Stone that could make people immortal. Although it was only a small piece of fragment, it was enough for Miss Hermione to take time to study it. In terms of alchemy, Miss Hermione also has a say. In short, she is not a novice. When learning alchemy, Miss Hermione also collected various ores in her space ring. She took some out and put them into Tony Stark's arc reactor, which could solve the problem of nuclear radiation. In this way, Tony Stark's arc reactor is not just a pure technological product, it is a product of technology and magic. Congratulations on completing Option 2 task. Reward basic attribute +2. That's right, Miss Hermione is not helping for free, she also wants some benefits. After the operation, Tony Stark, with the help of Goddess Hermione, miraculously got out of bed and walked. This made Dr. Ethan sigh again. The miracle of life. Hermione began to talk to Tony Stark. It seems that you have successfully developed the arc reactor. On Tony Stark's chest at this moment, there is a glowing ring, full of a sense of technology. But in fact, this is also a time bomb, and its power should not be underestimated. It's just that Tony Stark has always had the aura of the protagonist, so he was not detonated by the enemy. Otherwise, Tony Stark would be blown to pieces by this small arc reactor. Thank you, God. If it weren't for you, I might have died long ago. Tony Stark, who has the arc reactor, also became confident. He began to have hope for the future and life. People must live with hope, otherwise they will be lifeless, like zombies, and numb. Hermione replied, all this is also your own credit. You are better at scientific research. Then Hermione and Tony Stark talked about the structural problems of the Iron Man armor. It is still difficult to find so many metal materials in a short time. Miss Hermione can help Tony Stark. In the original drama and movie, the enemies seemed to be all fools. When Tony Stark almost finished the Iron Man armor and was about to wear it, he found that something was wrong. Here, Hermione used magic directly to make them cooperate with Tony Stark to make it. Although it looked funny, Hermione's magic was very powerful and lasted for a long time. When the enemy woke up, Tony Stark's Iron Man armor was almost done. It was rare that Hermione did not return to Hogwarts quickly this time, and she did not pick up any strange items. But Miss Hermione did not stay in the cave for a long time. It was Tony Stark who suffered in the cave, just like Sun Wukong who was pressed under the Five-Finger Mountain for 500 years in the myth. It was also Tony Stark's business to practice hard in the cave. Miss Hermione was more like a bodhisattva who came to help. Time passed in a flash, and Tony Stark lived a very comfortable life with the protection of God. The quality of life was also improved a lot. The drawings and initial production of the Iron Man armor were very smooth. The enemies seemed to be blind. Even when Tony Stark took a big hammer and started to hammer the heavy steel mask 80, the enemies did not suspect what he was doing. Dr. Ethan also felt that his days were full of meaning since the arrival of Iron Man. Although Hermione had been using magic, Dr. Ethan still had some feelings that sometimes there were more than just him and Tony Stark in the cave. Time finally came to the day when Hermione traveled back to Hogwarts. The system was quite perfunctory. This time Hermione picked up air, and then she traveled back. A space wormhole appeared, and Hermione traveled from the Marvel world and appeared directly in the classroom. The furnishings in this classroom made people feel very familiar. Yes, this is the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. Miss Hermione sat in her seat. Fortunately, she did not appear in other ways that were difficult to explain. Hermione looked around. After staying in the Marvel world for a few days, she suddenly came back and was still a little uncomfortable. Before she could get used to it, Ron on the side exclaimed. He rushed to Hermione like crazy and asked in surprise, "Hermione, where have you been these days?" "You know, I'm worried, very worried." Hermione looked over, and behind Ron, Harry was also looking at her with a concerned look. Hermione had thought about this problem. Although she could use the time converter to go back to the past and become two, she couldn't appear into time and space at the same time. If she stayed in the Marvel world for too long, she would inevitably disappear from Hogwarts for a while, which would be impossible not to arouse suspicion. Ron, I have something to do and I have to leave school temporarily. I left too quickly and didn't say hello to you. I'm sorry for that. Miss Hermione's answer certainly didn't make Ron completely satisfied, but at least he could get an answer, which was better than not being able to see his goddess all the time. As a dog, Ron's feelings for his goddess were as if they were 3 years apart after not seeing her for a day, which was difficult for others to understand. He pleaded, "Don't disappear suddenly and leave us again, okay?" Hermione had no way to answer him. According to her initial expectation, she might stay in Hogwarts for 6 or 7 years, at least until graduation, before she parted ways with Ron and Harry. However, since she traveled through Marvel, even though the world over there had just begun and Iron Man hadn't even built a battle armor, the timelines on both sides had been completely messed up. It was too difficult to find a reason to fill it. So at this moment Hermione couldn't answer Ron at all, because she didn't know where she would appear in the next second. Even worse, she might travel to other worlds. For example, Genshin Impact, such as the Wilderness, such as Cyberpunk, who knows. When Harry also wanted to come over and say a few words to Ms. Hermione, this year's new Defense Against the Dark Arts Professor Mad-Eye Moody swaggered in. As a habit of new professors in their first class, they would definitely bring new creatures in. The second-year Defense Against the Dark Arts Professor was in a cage. The third-year Defense Against the Dark Arts Professor was in a box. This year's Defense Against the Dark Arts Professor was in a glass jar, also covered with cloth. He looked very mysterious before he was taken out. Alistair Moody was once in error. I am dissatisfied with the Ministry of Magic. I am your new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. I came here because Dumbledore invited me. That's it, nothing else. Any problem? Moody's logic sounded a bit problematic, but who made him Mad-Eye? Chapter 296 Hogwarts, The Unforgivable Curses. Many students in the class also noticed the most beautiful witch in Hogwarts, Miss Hermione Granger. The days when Hermione disappeared also caused quite a stir in Hogwarts, but it was suppressed by Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall. By the way, the Triwizard Tournament was in full swing, and Miss Hermione's affairs were not brought to the table. Privately, it was all Miss Hermione's fans who were paying attention. Mad-Eye Moody also noticed the beautiful Hermione, but he was not surprised. They were all wizards, and it was normal to have some mystery. As the new Defense Against the Dark Arts Professor at Hogwarts, it was not surprising that Miss Hermione would come to visit curiously in the first class today. Defense Against the Dark Arts. I always advocate more practice, but first of all, who can tell me how many kinds of unforgivable curses there are? Mad-Eye Moody was very special, and didn't talk much nonsense. The students, even the professors and principals, didn't know that the Mad-Eye Moody in front of them was a fake. But his lectures were still quite good. The first thing that comes up is the exciting unforgivable curses. The unforgivable curses are very scary black magic, a general term. There are currently 3 widely known unforgivable curses. Miss Hermione just came back and hasn't even sat down yet. She wanted to be low-key, but the system options popped up. Option 1. Stand up and answer Mad-Eye Moody's questions. Tell him how many there are, and complete the task to reward basic attributes +1. Option 2. Stand up and tell Mad-Eye Moody that I can dance, and come and enjoy my dancing in the first class. Complete the task to reward 1 hamburger. Option 3. Take out the Sharingan contact lens, tell Mad-Eye Moody what illusion is, and analyze the difference between illusion and magic for them in a simple and easy to understand way. Complete the task to reward the exclusive attribute, Doctor, +1. What kind of a task is this? It's simply speechless. The familiar funny and silly system is back. Dancing in class is definitely impossible. Use illusions? Are you kidding? She is not a professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts. Why should she come to talk about the difference between illusions and magic? Then there is no choice. Only option 1 can be chosen. Hermione did not hesitate. She stood up. At that moment, all the classmates looked over. It was so beautiful. The sunlight from the gap in the window shone on Miss Hermione's desk. The reflected sunlight made Hermione's whole beautiful face white and rosy. Such a perfect and delicate face really made people want to see it again. "Sir, there are 3 kinds in total. Why is it called this name?" Mad-Eye Moody asked, looking at the beautiful girl in front of him. It was incredible that Hogwarts had such a beautiful witch. "Because they are unforgivable," Hermione answered as a 3-good student. "Using anyone will be unforgivable." Of course, Miss Hermione's answer was only the knowledge in the wizarding world. There is a saying that goes, humans cannot know knowledge beyond their own cognition. For example, the unforgivable curse. This is something that normal wizards know, but Hermione has a system. She is cheating, and her intermediate magic book has many spells that are more terrible than the unforgivable curse. After crossing Marvel, Hermione used several. For example, tearing the enemy's body into pieces, burning the enemy from the inside out, and turning him into powder. Hermione has not yet obtained a high-level magic book. Presumably, every high-level magic will have the ability to destroy the world. Mad-Eye Moody looked at Hermione for a few more times. It was so rare for her to be beautiful and knowledgeable. She would definitely be a well-known great magician in the future. "Using any unforgivable curse will send you directly to Azkaban." Mad-Eye Moody continued to teach. "Yes, the Ministry of Magic said that you are too young to see such evil spells, but I don't think so. You must understand the enemy and be fully prepared." Mad-Eye Moody thought that his lectures were very exciting. Although he was a fake, he had prepared for the first class today. However, there were students who didn't listen carefully in class. Most old professors are used to it and turn a blind eye. After all, you can't expect every student to be a model student. But Mad-Eye Moody's first class as a professor today, he can't tolerate it in his class. The student who didn't listen to the lecture was also very interesting. He was chewing gum secretly. After eating, he stuck the gum directly under the table. This is similar to many students who like to pick their noses and then smear it on the table legs or chair legs. It seems that most wizard students are not much different from ordinary Muggle students. You have to find another place to stick your gum. Don't stick it under the desk, Mr. Finnegan, Mad-Eye Moody shouted loudly. Awesome. The old man can see what's behind him. Of course, there are more than one naughty students, and they are all 4th-year students. Some boys are not afraid of professors at all. However, the fake Mad-Eye Moody's temper is not easy to mess with. He picked up the chalk and smashed it down. It was quite accurate and smashed it directly on the head of the student who complained that he was an old man. "I'm everywhere," Mad-Eye Moody said proudly. At that moment, he was the master of this class. The whole class was shocked. They didn't dare to provoke the new irritable defense against the dark arts professor anymore. Mad-Eye Moody still wanted to give a good lecture. He asked, "So, which unforgivable curse shall we look at first?" Weasley. Poor Weasley, maybe because he just ran to Hermione and talked a lot. Mad-Eye Moody felt that he was very unpleasant when he came in, so he asked him the first question. "What?" Ron exclaimed. In fact, he had no intention of listening to the class at all. He just wanted to ask more about Hermione's situation. Disappearing for several days in a row had never happened to Hermione before, unless it was winter or summer vacation, and they hadn't seen each other for several months. "Stand up." Mad-Eye Moody caught students like Ron who didn't listen to the lecture. "You say one." Ron was embarrassed. "What?" Mad-Eye Moody held back his anger. This brat was challenging his patience. Harry quickly reminded him. "Unforgivable curse, say one." Ron immediately understood that he was indeed distracted just now, but he had some impression, and he knew this question. Ron thought for a moment and quickly replied, "My father did say one, the Imperious Curse." Mad-Eye Moody's temper dissipated, and he said, "Yes, of course your father knows this. A few years ago, this curse caused great trouble to the Ministry. Perhaps, this can make you understand." He seemed to be talking about the past and the Ministry of Magic. Sometimes he was a little crazy and his logic was not very clear. Mad-Eye Moody began to turn around. He took out the wonderful things he had carefully prepared for today's class. The cloth on the glass jar was opened, and there was a spider inside. "Lovely little beauty." Mad-Eye Moody took out the spider like a madman, and the whole class began to get nervous, especially Ron. He was most afraid of spiders. Mad-Eye Moody put it in the palm of his hand, took out the wand with the other hand, and chanted the spell with a ferocious face. Imperious curse. The spider seemed to have its soul taken away immediately, and turned into a stupid spider controlled by Mad-Eye Moody at will. Mad-Eye Moody began his performance, and he controlled the spider to fly directly to the head of a fat classmate. The student was so scared that his face turned pale. "Don't worry, there's no danger. If it bites you, it will be fatal." Mad-Eye Moody seemed to be having a lot of fun. He used the Imperious Curse to control the spider and then scared the students in the class one by one. Boys and girls were no exception. The spider landed on a girl's arm and she almost cried. Please support my new book. Thank you everyone. Chapter 297 Marvel, Iron Man, I'll take you flying. Mad-Eye Moody was having a lot of fun. As an imposter, he thought that no one would notice. It was naturally fun to tease this group of wizard students. The big spider that was under the Imperious Curse was as arrogant as Mad-Eye Moody's heart at this moment, flying and jumping wantonly in the whole classroom. Mad-Eye Moody naturally did not let Hermione go. Hermione sneered and dodged easily. She was a low-key person. Otherwise, with a casual move, the spider in Mad-Eye Moody would be torn into pieces and died miserably. Mad-Eye Moody thought that he had not controlled it well, so he didn't care much. He controlled the big spider to fall directly on Ron's head. Ron screamed, and the fear in his heart could not be concealed at all. Ha ha ha. The one who laughed the loudest was naturally the Malfoy gang on the side. Over the years, Malfoy, Ron and Harry had never had a good life. What are you laughing at? Mad-Eye Moody didn't give Malfoy face. His prototype was Barty Crouch Jr. His father was the director of the enforcement department of the Ministry of Magic. He was more or less a young man, so naturally he didn't respect Malfoy, who was also a rich second generation. He casually swung his wand, and the big spider flew directly to Malfoy's face. This is much more uncomfortable than landing on his head. Malfoy was of course frightened and pale. Today he completely realized the horror of Mad-Eye Moody. In the future, he would have to be honest in his class. Go away, go away. Malfoy pushed the big spider on his face away in a panic. At this time, Harry applauded and Ron laughed, and they all felt that this new defense against the dark arts professor was too interesting. Is it very capable? Moody also knew when to stop. If he continued to play, it would be difficult to end it. What do you want it to do next? Jump out the window, or drown? Mad-Eye Moody began to continue teaching. The atmosphere in the class began to become heavy, because in Mad-Eye Moody's mouth, whether it was jumping out of the window or drowning, it all represented death. Moody seemed to enjoy the feeling of torturing or killing other lives, and his teaching voice always revealed his madness. Many male and female wizards claim that the reason they obeyed the you-know-who's orders was because they were under the Imperious Curse, but the question is, how do you know who is lying? Every point of view of Mad-Eye Moody was very explosive. The you-know-who can't be spoken casually, and Mad-Eye Moody has no taboos and dares to say anything. Another unforgivable curse. Mad-Eye Moody estimated the time. In today's class, he must finish teaching all 3 unforgivable curses. He is not used to delaying it until the next class. Mad-Eye Moody came to the student who had the same unlucky attribute as Ron in Hogwarts and knocked on his desk. Your name is Longbottom. Stand up and tell me. Professor Sprout told me that you have a talent for herbology. Mad-Eye Moody seemed to show his understanding of his students all the time, every one of them. If Mad-Eye Moody was not pretending, but a real professor, his attentiveness would indeed make him a good teacher. Mad-Eye Moody seemed to know every student's personality, family, specialties, etc. Longbottom was the one who wore earmuffs and fainted in the first herbology class. Longbottom's expression began to become painful. He didn't want to mention the next unforgivable curse, because it represented a painful past that he didn't want to recall. Few students knew that Longbottom's parents were tortured crazy by the Cruciatus Curse, one of the unforgivable curses, and they still live in Street Mungo's hospital for magical maladies and injuries. They still can't recognize their son Longbottom. Mad-Eye Moody knows Longbottom, and he did it on purpose, because he knew that Longbottom must be very clear about one of the unforgivable curses and hate it to the bone. At this moment, another stone suddenly fell in front of Ms. Hermione. This time it was quite big, half the size of a palm. very abrupt. The sound of it hitting the table instantly attracted the attention of the whole class, and everyone looked towards Hermione. Ron also noticed it. During this period, too many strange things had happened to Hermione. Where did this stone come from? The roof of the classroom was not high. You could see the ceiling when you looked up, and there was no place where the stone was broken and fell. Of course, Hermione was speechless. Looking at the source of the stone, Hermione knew that she would put on her battle suit again and travel to another world to be the savior. But if she disappeared so openly, how would she explain it in the future? She had disappeared for a few days. As soon as this class was over, Vice Principal Professor McGonagall might come to ask about this specific situation. Principal Dumbledore was going to host the Triwizard Tournament. He had to go with the principals of the other two magic schools, and might not have time to take care of what happened to Ms. Hermione. What should I do? Time was running out, and Hermione suddenly had an idea. She is a person who has a system of cheats. Why can't she do some magical things for the first time? For example, Hermione took out the time converter and began to adjust time. As long as she adjusted it forward a few hours, she could travel back to the past. Theoretically, there would be two Hermiones, and Hermione would have a few extra hours. Hermione used the Hermione who went back to the past to touch the stone of unknown origin and travel through time, and the other Hermione stayed in Hogwarts. This idea is very bold. I don't know if it can be established. In theory, even if Hermione is the heroine, it is impossible for one soul and two bodies to appear in two time and space, two worlds at the same time. But Hermione's system is awesome. The time and space channel appeared, the familiar feeling of traveling through time, and when Hermione opened her eyes again, she actually succeeded. She perfectly had a few extra hours. As long as she completed the task within these few hours and traveled back, she would not suddenly disappear in Hogwarts. On the contrary, if Hermione completed the task in the Marvel world during these few hours, but did not go back in time, then the effect of the time converter would disappear, and there could only be one Hermione in the two worlds. Hermione at Hogwarts will suddenly disappear, just like she has evaporated from the face of the earth, without even a space-time wormhole. This is the only way. Boom. In the hail of bullets, Hermione had just arrived in the Marvel world, and it was still the familiar cave. Hermione looked at the stone in her hand. Yes, it was exactly the same stone that was blown up by the machine gun bomb in the cave. No wonder the stone was so big this time. Hermione quickly became invisible and did her best to protect herself. Even though she was very strong now, she would still be injured if she was hit by a bullet or a bomb. It's better to be safe than sorry. Hermione quickly found Tony Stark, who was now wearing a heavy Iron Man armor and looked like an oversized robot. Although the equipment was simple, it had to be said that it was still full of technology and coolness. The enemy's bullets, hitting his thick steel plate, could only create sparks, but could not hurt it at all. In fact, this is not scientific. Even a heavier tank can be blown up. In the original movie, Tony Stark's first-generation Iron Man armor, which should have many shortcomings, was almost completely intact. In the original movie, Tony Stark relied on the protagonist's halo. Here, Tony Stark relies on Hermione the Savior. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 298 Hogwarts. I'm helping Iron Man and Marvel. Miss Hermione is really busy, running back and forth between two worlds. She already has more time to study than others because of the time converter, and now there is another world. However, Miss Hermione did not complain too much. If complaining is useful, complaining will only waste time and miss opportunities. Iron Man was suppressed by firepower in the cave, and it can be seen that the enemy has begun to use large weapons. In the original movie, it seems that the director wants to highlight the high martial arts of the protagonist, and he doesn't use guns, but just competes in martial arts. Isn't this very stupid? Ordinary people know that it hurts to hit people with bricks when fighting. In the Marvel world that Hermione traveled to, the enemy's level of stupidity is obviously not high enough. They brought a lot of explosives and rocket launchers, just to blow up the cave and bury Iron Man directly in it. Let's not talk about the issue of burying or not. The power of the explosives alone is enough to shock Tony Stark to death. In the original drama and movie, the enemies dared not use heavy weapons, only guns. They knew that bullets could not harm Iron Man, but I was stupid, so I used them. I just wanted to wait for Iron Man to wipe us out. We didn't need the bombs and rocket launchers outside, just waited for Iron Man to come out and destroy them all. This is very Ginkgo. Option 1. Help Tony Stark, eliminate the enemy's heavy fire suppression, and successfully escape with Tony Stark. Complete the task to reward basic attributes +2. Option 2. The enemy's firepower is not strong enough. What if Iron Man's protagonist Halo is too strong and still can't be killed? I have intercontinental missiles, super armor-piercing bombs, and nuclear warheads. I don't believe it can't be killed. Complete the task to reward exclusive attributes. Villain, +1. Option 3. No matter what, go to the desert to find an oasis to take a bath. Complete the task to reward one little yellow duck swimming ring. At such a critical moment, the system option popped up, and Miss Hermione was not surprised at all. Otherwise, she would not have been transported here. To be honest, Miss Hermione still thinks option 2 is more interesting. Which is more powerful, Iron Man's aura as a protagonist, or intercontinental missiles, armor-piercing bombs, and nuclear warheads? If Miss Hermione's time turner can still be used, it's not impossible to try it. At worst, Tony Stark will be blown to death, and Hermione will travel back and save him. As for the butterfly effect, Hermione is a god, and it can't affect her, so let Tony Stark bear the consequences himself. Of course, it's not worth it to get a villain +1 attribute. Missiles are free. It's not worth wasting so many bombs for experiments. Moreover, Hermione originally traveled through time after using the time turner. The current time turner is still in use, and she can't use it again unless Hermione can get the time stone in the Infinity Stones. In this way, Hermione can use the time turner and the time stone at the same time, disrupting the law of time twice. Option 3 is in line with Miss Hermione's personality, but it's just that, in this big desert, you have to find an oasis to take a bath, and the reward is a little yellow duck swimming ring. I really don't have any interest. Since you have come here with so much difficulty, just be the savior again. Tony Stark is in a difficult situation, because in the cave, Dr. Ethan, who helped him a lot, has been killed by the enemy in order to help Tony Stark delay time. At the same time, the enemy's firepower here is very fierce. Knowing that ordinary bullets have no effect on his steel armor, they directly use grenades and other heavy weapons. If this continues, Tony Stark's Iron Man will not be able to get out of this cave and will be blown up. Moreover, this cave will not last long under such fierce artillery fire. The cave collapsed, and with the current power of the first generation of Iron Man, it is probably difficult to escape. The situation is very critical, and Tony Stark also saw that enemies kept coming in with rocket launchers outside. Some of the rocket launchers were used to attack tanks. Tony Stark himself didn't know whether his first-generation armor could withstand the thickness of the tank. At this moment, Tony Stark suddenly saw the dawn. The colorful light of magic suddenly appeared, and all the explosives placed at the entrance of the cave were blown away by a gust of wind, and almost all the enemies were petrified. In the open space, an invisible figure appeared. Her eyes were very strange, blood red, and there were 3 magatomas spinning. Any enemy who looked at her began to kill each other. That's right, this is the Sharingan contact lens. Hermione took it out and used it for the first time on the battlefield. It's pretty good and practical. The enemies who were hit by Hermione's illusion couldn't tell who was the enemy and who was the teammate, and some even committed suicide directly. The scene was weird to the extreme. Is this the power of God? Even though Tony Stark had witnessed Miss Hermione's divine power more than once, he still felt chilled when he saw it again. God is simply too terrifying. Ordinary people are more fragile than ants in front of her. Let's go. Let's get out of here. Hermione glanced at Tony Stark, and the two walked out of the cave together. Originally, there should have been a fierce battle, and most of the ferocious enemies had died tragically at this moment. Most of them were under the illusion, killing each other, and even saw trees growing out of their mouths, and their bodies were ruptured by stones, and finally they couldn't bear it and committed suicide. Originally, it should have been a tense and exciting escape against the clock, but since the arrival of God, it has been almost a one-sided massacre, and it was the enemies themselves who did it. The scene was very chaotic, but after all the enemies died, it was extremely quiet. Wait a minute, God, I know you can do anything. Tony Stark took off his mask. Although he was protected by the first generation of Iron Man armor, he still couldn't avoid some injuries. After all, the first generation of armor had many defects, and it was difficult for people to have a 100% comfortable combat experience in it. Dr. Ethan was killed by the enemy to help me. God, can you reverse time and space and go back to the past to save him? This was the request made by Tony Stark. He knew that God was omnipotent. Although going back to the past to save Dr. Ethan might bring about a butterfly effect, such as Dr. Ethan's life being saved, but Tony died instead. But today's Tony Stark has a sense of responsibility. He is about to become a superhero who saves the suffering. If there is no way, he will naturally not speak. But he knows that the God in front of him can do it. However, Miss Hermione refused without hesitation. No, I came here today by reversing time, and I can't use it again. Also, Dr. Ethan died to save you. He is great. There is no need to change this. As Iron Man, you have to help more suffering people in the future, so that his sacrifice will not be in vain. Tony Stark was silent for a while. He knew that reversing time and space is not an easy task even for God, and Tony Stark has experienced it before. The first time he lost his legs, although he went back to the past and got his legs back, there was still a hole in his chest. It is almost impossible to reverse it completely. Dr. Ethan died like a hero now. It is indeed as God said, his death is valuable. If it is really reversed, there may be unpredictable results. For example, Dr. Ethan is no longer a hero, but a new and more evil villain. Please support the new book. Thank you everyone. Chapter 299. There is a shop in the sunset, selling orange dusk, Marvel travel. Just when Miss Hermione was about to take Tony Stark away, Iron Man's armor had a problem. My armor can't seem to fly. The enemy's artillery fire was much more fierce than expected. Because of the appearance and interference of God, all processes were accelerated. Several bullets damaged Tony Stark's flying launcher. Hermione directly cast a magic and took Tony Stark to fly. Although it was not so cool, Tony Stark finally escaped from this hell. At this time, the sky was already full of red clouds. There was a store in the sunset, selling orange sunset, which was a beautiful scenery. A dialogue box popped up in front of Ms. Hermione. Option 1. Land below. Let Tony Stark throw away the abandoned armor on his body, complete the foreshadowing of the subsequent plot, and complete the task to reward basic attributes +1. Option 2. Take Tony Stark directly to the city and let him have a big meal. Complete the task to reward 1 plate of dumplings. Option 3. Find a way to take Tony Stark to travel to the world of Harry Potter. Complete the task and you will be rewarded with the exclusive attribute, Travel +1. What the hell? Hermione can accept the first two options, but the latter is too incredible. Bring Iron Man Tony Stark to the Wizarding World, establish the Avengers in the Wizarding World. Although it sounds exciting to imagine, it is already chaotic enough for Hermione to travel through Marvel alone. If she brings another person with her, wouldn't that make things even more chaotic? Besides, it will definitely not be easy. The only choices left are option 1 and option 2. Option 1 is a bit in line with the original setting. Although it feels a bit forced, it can undoubtedly avoid the unknown butterfly effect, and it is safe. If you change the gameplay arbitrarily, Miss Hermione will be fine after completing the task, but Tony Stark will be miserable. The terrible butterfly effect will make him live a life worse than death. So in order to make his future predictable, Hermione should try to follow the original play. It's like a journey in life, from birth, aging, illness and death. In fact, the roads you have walked and the scenery you have seen have also been walked and seen by others. From a god's perspective, ordinary humans are actually the same. But in fact, everyone is an individual. Even if everyone eats 3 meals a day, even if everyone plays games, even if everyone sleeps, because individuals are different, different stories will naturally occur. Hermione retracted her magic, and Tony Stark in midair fell vertically. This was completely unexpected for Tony, who had just escaped. He still had the strength to scream. Fortunately, his protagonist Halo saved his life again. Even if the armor on his body could withstand machine gun grenades, it fell into the sand pile at this moment and completely fell apart. The steel armor fell everywhere, and Tony Stark came out of it covered in blood. In the original play, he was almost intact, but he was not so lucky here. He had almost a large area of burns on his body, and he had just fallen down and broke his leg. He looked very embarrassed. Hermione fell gracefully from the air. She did not explain why she threw Tony Stark down, because that was how it was played in the original play and movie. Of course Hermione can change, but the consequences can only be borne by Tony Stark. Hermione took out her wand and cast a healing spell. Tony Stark's broken leg was connected. With the help of special magic powder, Tony Stark's large-scale burns were also magically healed. At least Tony Stark can stand up and walk immediately, and it doesn't hurt so much. Thank you, God. Although some of God's actions made Tony Stark very confused, such as the shrapnel in his heart now, which was caused by Hermione's grenade. For example, when he broke his leg just now, God also dropped him from a high altitude. However, how can mortals guess what God thinks? In the end, Tony Stark successfully escaped, and Tony Stark still wanted to sincerely thank God. In the original play, Tony Stark suffered a lot and finally escaped. The first thing he did was to keep running. It would definitely not work with fragmented armor. So in the original series, Tony Stark never thought of taking a piece of iron away, although he just broke his leg. Fortunately, he still had the omnipotent God by his side. So Tony Stark looked at the armor fragments on the ground behind him and said, God, these things can't be left here. If the bad guys get it, the consequences will be disastrous. After all, Tony Stark has seen that part of the weapons he had developed before are now in the hands of bad guys. So except for God, no one can get the technology related to Iron Man from him. Hermione thought of something and replied, they don't have an arc reactor, so even if they have these iron pieces, they are useless. Besides, don't you want to know who hurt you? Maybe if you leave these things, you will know the answer in the future. Tony Stark felt as if his life was written on paper. If one day, you see this book in an old house, you curiously open it, and the content written inside is all your life experience, no matter how big or small, from childhood to adulthood, do you say you are afraid? You will feel that every part of your life is arranged. Very scary. But fortunately, Miss Hermione has called herself a god since she came to Marvel to travel. The knowledge she has accumulated and her various magical abilities have made her look more and more like a real god. God, do you know everything about me? Hermione counted with her fingers and said mysteriously, the secrets of heaven cannot be revealed. You know that everything has cause and effect. It's better to be confused in life. For example, everyone is destined to die from birth, a few years, decades, or 100 years. But if you live only to welcome death, then what is the meaning of a short life? On the contrary, there are some inevitable things that don't need to be thought so clearly. Sadness is a day, happiness is a day, we will die eventually. Why not live a carefree life? Tony Stark learned a lot from the words of God, and he understood a lot. Tony Stark nodded. God, I understand. I don't want these steel fragments anyway. I already have a better design in my mind. But what should I do next? Hermione looked up at the sunset sky. Because the timeline was much earlier than the original show, Tony Stark worked alone in the original show, without Hermione's help, and it took several months. Here, it was only less than half a month. Seeing that there was no helicopter to pick up Tony Stark, Hermione said. "Now, let's make a fire and cook." God is not only beautiful as an angel, but also usually comes and goes in a hurry. It was the first time Tony Stark knew that God also had to eat, and he ate a lot. After eating and drinking, Hermione took out a comfortable recliner and tent for Tony Stark. "You can sleep with this tonight." "Thank you." In the firelight, Tony Stark could observe this goddess carefully for the first time. Her beauty was beyond doubt, but it was the first time Tony Stark felt that God was like a human, and also had such a worldly atmosphere. "I suddenly felt that I was much closer to God." Chapter 300. Fortunately, the longing is silent, otherwise it would be deafening. Hogwarts travel. Fortunately, the longing is silent, otherwise it would be deafening. Fortunately, the longing is invisible, otherwise it would stretch for thousands of miles. The mental journey of a dog licker, the ups and downs of love. Only a few hours have passed, and Hermione has traveled to the Marvel world to help Tony Stark escape. If Hermione hadn't come to do the task, perhaps Tony Stark would have been much smoother. Before he became Iron Man, he was almost walking on a tightrope, from being injured by a rocket, to having a hole in his chest surgery, to hiding the truth and developing the first generation of Iron Man armor in the cave where the enemy imprisoned him. Every detail cannot be wrong, otherwise it will trigger a chain reaction. But Miss Hermione's appearance disrupted all of this from the beginning, causing Tony Stark's experience to be even more thrilling. His protagonist halo is also threatened to a certain extent. Tony Stark still wants to chat with God. Why did God help him so much? For the peace of the universe, Hermione said shamelessly. Tony Stark was amazed. As a superhero, he was supposed to protect the peace of the earth. He never thought that God was God and was supposed to protect the peace of the universe. Tony Stark looked up at the vast night sky. In the dark cave, he could not see such a beautiful night sky. The universe is so big. There should be many planets like the Earth. God, tell me about them. Will their technology still use magic like you do? Hermione was too lazy to say anything. If she made up a lie, she would have to make up for it with more lies. So she simply didn't make up a lie. The secret of heaven cannot be leaked. Tony Stark nodded seriously. He was worthy of being a god, so principled. Things that cannot be told to mortals, never tell. Since there was nothing to talk about, Tony Stark decided to sleep. He had lived a life worse than pigs and dogs in the cave, and now he finally escaped. Although he was still in the vast desert, with God by his side, Tony Stark could also sleep well. Hermione couldn't sleep. She searched for a long time but didn't find what she wanted. She came to Marvel this time using a time converter, so when Tony Stark asked her to save the dead Dr. Ethan, Hermione couldn't do it at all. Time is running out. If Hermione doesn't find a way to go back, then Hermione in the Hogwarts classroom will suddenly disappear, and only Hermione will stay in the Marvel world. There's nothing wrong with staying in the Marvel world. Although it's just as dangerous here, Hermione can still protect herself if she's careful. That is, her peaceful life in Hogwarts may be completely broken. Suddenly, Hermione heard the sound of an armed helicopter. Hermione immediately flew up and saw at a glance that it was the army looking for Tony Stark. Because Tony Stark is so important, the original show has been looking for him for several months, so it's impossible for this side to stop looking for him in less than half a month. Hermione thought of several ways, such as making a survival signal to let the helicopter find Tony Stark below. For example, let Tony Stark wake up and shout for help. Of course, there is a simpler way. Miss Hermione used magic to instantly throw Tony Stark, along with the tent, into the helicopter. This was of course not in line with Miss Hermione's usual low-key style, but, who cares? Anyway, Hermione is the savior and god in the Marvel world. Gods must behave in an extraordinary way. The dazzling light of magic is almost omnipotent in this desert, mainly because Miss Hermione has been studying hard in the wizarding world. If she was a poor student who couldn't even recite the simplest levitation spell smoothly, then forget it. Even if she traveled to Marvel, she would still be a poor student. The powerful magic made Tony Stark transferred to the helicopter while he was still asleep. Of course, the most surprised were the soldiers on the helicopter. "Oh my god, what happened? Oh my god, I'm not dreaming." A tent suddenly appeared in our helicopter. Oh my god, there's another person in it. When Tony Stark was awakened by the dazzling flashlight, he was stunned, and a row of soldiers looked at him in even greater surprise. You are Tony Stark? Oh my god, we have been looking for you for half a month, and you actually ran into our plane tonight. I just want to know, how did you do it? Tony Stark was also confused. It was not until the explanation was clear that he gradually understood, and he immediately coughed pretentiously. Quiet, quiet, you may not believe it. This is the power of God. I, Tony Stark, am a man protected by God. Although no one believed it, the soldiers who had not experienced the invasion of the Earth by cosmic creatures thought that there was only science in this world. But the bizarre scene just now was indeed something that science could not explain. When the soldiers wanted more details, Tony Stark only answered one sentence: "The secret cannot be leaked." Then he lay down and continued to sleep. He was too sleepy. He needed to keep his spirits up. After returning, he still had a lot of things to do. Of course, he naturally didn't miss hamburgers. In the original play, the first thing he wanted to do after he successfully escaped was to eat a few hamburgers. Here, Goddess Hermione had already treated him to a meal, and it was the most delicious burger Tony Stark had ever eaten in his life. It was indeed the food of the god, which was better than that of the human world. On Hermione's side, she finally got what she wanted. She saw a notebook floating down from the sky, with a very neat and delicate name, Hermione Granger, on it. That's right, this time Hermione actually picked up her notebook from Hogwarts in Marvel. Who would write a diary? Of course, Hermione didn't have the habit of writing a diary, but her study was inseparable from the diary, which contained her knowledge manuals on magic, potions, alchemy, etc. Ordinary people couldn't understand it at all. Even if a great wizard like Dumbledore could understand it, he couldn't perform it. The reason was that Hermione had a system, and she was cheating. There were some magic theories that only she could do, and ordinary wizards couldn't do it at all. Miss Hermione held her diary and left the Marvel world without any nostalgia. The time was just right. In the last 3 seconds, when the magic of the time converter ended, Hermione came back from the Marvel world. The time was just right. In this way, Miss Hermione was in the defense against the dark arts class as if she had never left. But in fact, she had been traveling to Marvel for several hours, and many key things had happened. Miss Hermione understood that the reason why she was so successful was not only because of her own intelligence and hard work. There was also the help of the system. Without the system, even if Hermione had amazing intelligence, she could not achieve such a perfect time connection. When he lowered his head, the palm-sized stone was still on the table, but the stone had lost the ability to travel through the other world. Ron and Harry looked over worriedly. They were worried that Hermione would suddenly disappear, because she had disappeared for many days before. But today Hermione seemed to be sitting in the classroom all the time, but in fact, she had left and came back. Others just didn't know. Mad-Eye Moody certainly didn't know either. He was still asking poor classmate Longbottom about what the next unforgivable spell was. Please support the new book. Thank you everyone. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.